Some teachers go way too far, and today is no exception. Buckle in, as in today's story time, the teacher calls a kid fat-phobic for not being fat himself. Let's jump in. So we're going to call this subscriber who submitted today's story Kyle. So anyways, right, Kyle was in the 6th grade, and in one of his classes, they had an assignment. And this assignment was pick something about your life that you are genuinely passionate about, make a presentation, and present it to the class. The whole point of the presentation was to learn skills of public speaking. I think this was I don't know if this was specifically a public speaking class, as that almost seems a little bit too specific for 6th grade, but it was some kind of class where they were it was public speaking or they were going over a public speaking unit. And the assignment said you can choose whatever topic as long as it's appropriate, right? You can't be like, oh, these are my top 10 favorite. I can't say that. I got kids watching, man. But as long as it was appropriate, there was no real the grading wasn't based on the content itself. It was really just trying to motivate kids to, have fun with this project and learn how to speak in front of the class. I think this is a genius idea, and I really wish that was more like a focus in 5th, 4th, 6th grade, whatever. Because honestly, public speaking and speaking in front of your classmates is going to be such a major part of high school and college and potentially what you do later on at work if you have to present to your fellow people who work at your company or whatever, right? So I think that's a really great idea. And Kyle, the subscriber, was a big fan of the gym. So when you're in 6th grade, you can't really get to you can't become deadlifting 12,000 pounds, right? But, you can still go to the gym, work out, and it's a great thing. It's a great lifelong activity, and I highly suggest it, right? Gym good. But yeah, so Kyle was a really big fan. He would go many times a day. He'd lift some weights, he would run, and he really liked getting into the science behind it. And honestly, I think that's pretty cool because there's a lot of science behind it, but it's cool to see a kid kind of get into something a little bit more technical, and maybe he even wants to go into sports medicine. Maybe he wants to start a career this way. What I'm trying to say is this is something that should be encouraged. And as you will soon see, the teacher is going to be big mad when this happens. So anyways, Kyle, when he hears that he has to do a presentation on something that he genuinely cares about, immediately knows that he wants to do a presentation on the gym, his daily life with it, what he does, and just basic advice for people who want to begin. I think one of the biggest reasons why people don't go to the gym is because it's scary in the beginning and it's hard to stick with it. And Kyle wanted to give some advice for that situation because he's been in that situation before. So anyways, Kyle spends a lot of time making this, right? He really puts in the effort to make this as good as humanly possible. Because he really he genuinely cares about it. And he wants to show the world that he does genuinely care about it, you know what I mean? So Kyle puts in a lot of work. He puts in a lot of effort. And he does, he gets a really good presentation together. So when it's the time to present, right, let me give you guys a little multiple choice question. So here's the question. When Kyle presents his project to the class that he spent a lot of time on, and it looks like he spent a lot of time on, and it's a good presentation, do you think A, the teacher will respond appropriately, give Kyle a grade based on his work, and move on? Or B, the teacher will be big mad that he's talking about the gym and fail him for fat phobia? If you answered A, God bless your heart, but this is not the society and world we live in. If you answered B, you're a little cynical, but you're also a little right. So yeah, anyways, Kyle goes up there, he does his presentation, and he feels like he's doing a really good job. But one thing that was happening is people went before Kyle, and when they would go up there, the teacher would be looking at them, she would be smiling, she would be giving little claps and thumbs up, words of encouragement, and when they were done, she'd be like, Steven, that was so good, Audrey, that was amazing, and give them a high five or whatever. She was very, very all about encouraging them or whatever, which is great, and she's really great in that regard. So shout out to the teacher for doing that. Can't say shout out to the teacher for doing the thing she's about to do. So anyways, Kyle goes up there and he's giving the presentation. And while he's giving the presentation, he accidentally made eye contact with the teacher, and the teacher, who normally was all smiley and happy and giving a big thumbs up or whatever, was giving Kyle a death stare. She was staring deep into his soul, and she was very, very unhappy. So Kyle, is immediately thrown off by this. He's like, anyway, it literally makes him stumble in his presentation. Because the teacher, for all the other ones, was all happy and smiling, and maybe not even that she wasn't smiling, but she was giving him a death stare, bro. You could tell it was different. And the thing is, Kyle wasn't having a presentation being like, if you don't work out, you're weak and lame, and you're gonna die early. He wasn't doing something annoying. He was just like, this is something I like. This is something that I'm genuinely passionate about. And if you want like help starting, this is what I did to keep me going, right? Very normal, very like, I don't know, something I think that should be encouraged. I think it's a great thing to work out in whatever capacity you do it. I don't really care. It's just doing it in some capacity is great. You're going to have so many benefits, mental, physical, all these great things, right? But the teacher was big mad. And Kyle knew for a fact that she was big mad when he ended the presentation. Remember, for everyone else, she was like, this is so great. Like, Harrison, high five, bro. You go, Rudy. That was a great one. Or whatever, right? She literally says nothing and folds her arm. So all the other kids in the class clap because they're like, especially like a bunch of his boys in the back were like, yeah, let's go, Kyle, baby. Let's go. So everyone was clapping normally as they did for everyone else. But the teacher was big angry right now. She was not having it. Like her arms were folded. Here's the thing though. She doesn't say anything to him that day. She doesn't say anything, but you will see that she was in fact very, very upset. Very upset. But her arms were folded. Her arms were crossed. And let me just reiterate for the final time, there was nothing offensive in Kyle's presentation. There was nothing that was like, and I clarified this, there was nothing that was like, fat people are going to die earlier, lol. There was nothing like offensive. There was nothing intimidating. It was genuinely just like an informational thing about something he enjoyed, which is literally the assignment, bro. So yeah, Kyle learns that she's not a fan the next day when they get their grades back. So basically, the next day, the teacher's walking around with a bunch of slips of paper. And on the slip of paper is your grade from the assignment and then a few notes, right? If you got an A, the notes might just be like, good job, right? If you got a B, it might be like, good job, but I wish you did X, right? Just like a few notes for comments if necessary. And the thing is, for a presentation like this, which is kind of just, it really was an exercise in practicing your ability to speak in front of people. This wasn't like an assignment that a teacher would, or this teacher, besides for Kyle, would have graded you harshly. Like the teacher would have given you a B if you kind of messed up, right? If you just, I don't know, your presentation was obviously not super great, or you just were not doing a good job public speaking at all, she would have given you like a B plus, right? Not a grade that would sink your grade or anything like that. So when Kyle turns over his paper to see an F, he was so taken aback because he knew for a fact that he did not do F work. If anything, he didn't even do B work. He knew for a fact compared to other people that he knew also got A's, he did at least A material work, right? So he looks at the comment and the comment says, come meet me after class, frowny face. The teacher wrote a freaking frowny face, bro. So yeah. Gotta meet her after class. Class. The secret word of the day is class. So if you made it this far into the video, comment class down below. Don't forget to listen to these stories on Spotify. The link to the official podcast is in the description. And if you're listening on Spotify, thank you. And please rate the podcast 5 stars. Anyways, so Kyle looks at this and thinks, okay, what is happening? Because he knows it's not a mistake, because if she meant to write an A but scribbled down an F or something, she wouldn't write out as well, come see me after class, frowny face. Like that would make literally no sense. Yeah, so Kyle, after class stops at her desk. And, before he stops at her desk, she's like, bye, Susan. Bye, Ben. Everyone have a good day. And when he gets to her desk, her face just completely changes. Her face goes from like happy, whatever, bye guys, to like, I'm literally gonna like take this hammer and blow your head off, bro. Like just this angry look. And Kyle's like, whoa, like I'm sensing a little bit of aggression from this corner of the room. Like, oh my God. So yeah, sure enough, Kyle stands there and he's like, and she's like, we need to talk about your presentation yesterday and why you received the grade that you did. And Kyle's like, yeah, I'm really confused. I feel like I hit all the points. I feel like I obviously put in a lot of work, and I feel like I presented pretty well. This doesn't seem to really match up with the rubric. And she's like, your presentation yesterday was offensive. And, Kyle's like, what? Like, what was offensive about it? She's like, how do you think that makes the people who are not working out feel? And Kyle's like, what? He's like, yeah, that presentation made everybody in the room who wasn't working out feel really bad about themselves. Did you think about that, Kyle? And Kyle's like, whoa, chill out, dude. What? You're the adult here. Okay, he doesn't say that, but he thinks, dude, you're the adult here, bro. Like, what's going on? But basically he says like, oh, well, that's why I had that whole thing in the presentation, because I used to not work out and I would start it and then I'd quit. So I wanted to give advice for, what I did to stick with it. And she's like, how do you know that like people who aren't working out just think it's better to not work out? Like you're putting your lifestyle on them. And Kyle was so like confused on what was going on. He was like, I genuinely don't understand what I did wrong. And she's like, I will give you, because I am feeling generous today, because I am a generous individual, I will give you an opportunity tomorrow to come in with a brand new presentation on a non-offensive topic, and I will consider changing your grade from an F to a B perhaps. Yeah, you guys heard that right. Basically, the teacher was big mad that Kyle was saying good things about working out. And she was like, I'm not working out, and this makes me feel bad about not working out, so I need to fail him, right? And in because she is feeling, quote unquote, generous, she decides that she's going to give him a quote unquote opportunity. Basically, that opportunity means you need to go home. Instead of having a week to work on a presentation, you have literally one night. You have to present it in front of everybody, which means everybody knows that you failed the other presentation and you're given another chance by the generous teacher, and you may get a B if she's in the right mood. So completely ridiculous. And Kyle looks at her and is like, none of the stuff I put out was, in my opinion, offensive. I think if you surveyed the class, they'd agree with me as well. And she's like, that is not an opinion. Like, that is not true. And also, I'm not doing that. I'm not putting the class through any more mental stress than your presentation already did. And Kyle's like, bro, what? I'm literally, you're saying that people were offended by it. I'm saying everyone liked it. Why don't we just put some empirical evidence to this, bro? Why don't we put it to a test? But bro, the teacher was really like, you're gonna put them through more mental stress than you already have. Dude, chill out, bro. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, so Kyle felt pretty defeated right then because remember, he genuinely put a ton of work into this presentation. This wasn't something they put together last minute. I mean, the teacher said, choose something you're genuinely passionate about. And Kyle followed the orders. He also chose something that wasn't that offensive. And he even made his presentation so that people who were, maybe wanted to work out, but it didn't work out in the past, weren't able to follow through. Going to the gym is something I've personally been doing for the last 6 months, and I had to do certain things to make sure it was consistent, because I would always, for the last couple of years, I would start for 2 weeks and then quit, start for a month and then fall off. And I've had to change certain things and do things differently to stay consistent. I've really only seen the results after doing it for 6 months. It's just something like that. So Kyle wanted to kind of give the gift of the work that he's put into the other people. And he felt as if the teacher was unfairly, giving him an F. He just felt that was unright. So Kyle, while feeling defeated in the classroom and realizing that he was not able to convince the teacher otherwise, Kyle decided that what he was going to do was that he was going to bring it to the principal, because something in Kyle's school that they were aware of, even though it rarely works, one thing you need to know is this never happens, but it could happen in theory. If you are truly upset with a grade and you think that it was completely ridiculous, you can bring it to the principal, and you can basically bring it to the administration, and they can issue a reversion. They can revert your grade to something else. However, while that is technically something you could do, Kyle has never heard it work. Like, apparently it worked years before when he wasn't at this school. But for all the time Kyle has been at this school, there has never been a grade reversion. Like, kids have gone with their grades, and the principal might be like, well, this is a little unfair, but I don't feel like it's unfair enough for me to step in. Which, I mean, I guess makes sense, because I feel like the principal doesn't want to make it a habit that whenever you don't get a good grade, you come to him and he fixes it. But he also, I guess the principal wanted it to be an open path. He wanted it to be an open door, because there are situations where teachers will go power hungry, or they'll either have like a complete lapse in judgment and it will impact your grade. Because sure, sixth grade grades don't matter that much, but they also kind of do. They do a little bit. I don't know. But it was a thing that he wanted to have open. So Kyle brings his presentation and brings all the materials and brings everything, including the note that said he failed. And yeah, he went to the principal and he said, hey, I failed a presentation. And the principal's like, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, did you not meet the requirements? And Kyle says, I think I exceeded the requirements. The reasons weren't because of that. The reasons were because my presentation was quote unquote offensive, so I failed. And the principal is like, well, I mean, offensive is a little subjective. Like, if it even seems like it could be offensive to someone, I can't really help you. So this is where Kyle was a little bit concerned, because he started to realize that there's a chance where the principal's like, so this doesn't offend me, but I might see how the teacher's offended by it, so I can't help you. Because Kyle knew it was very difficult to get help. It was really difficult to get a grade reverted, right? So Kyle's like, hey, the presentation takes 3 minutes. Can I just give you the presentation? The principal's like, okay. So Kyle goes up and he just like shows his computer instead of like projecting it. He just opens up his like Chromebook or whatever and goes to the slides and gives his presentation. And by the end of it, the teacher's like, so what are you leaving out? And that's when Kyle knew that he might actually win this. Because the principal said, what are you leaving out, after Kyle finishes his presentation. That basically implies that the principal has seen nothing offensive yet. And Kyle's like, I swear, sir, that was my entire presentation. The principal's like, come on, like, did you like call someone like fat or something, or what? And, sure enough, he's like, no, dude, like, this is literally the presentation. And the principal's like, wow, Kyle, I didn't think I was going to, even consider this when you came in, and I have not done this in over 7 years, but I think we need to have I'm actually going to truly consider a grade reversion here. And Kyle's like, oh my God, it actually might happen. Because guys, you need to understand that at Kyle's school, this is like a Hail Mary. This is like a triple field Hail Mary, bro. This is like unheard of. So basically, the principal says, okay, Kyle, I got to meet with can I keep these materials here? And, Kyle's like, yes. And Kyle's like, wait, can I at least explain what the teacher said? So the principal's like, okay, sure, whatever. And Kyle said, hey, so the teacher asked me to go up after class, and he hands them the slip that says failed, meet me after class. And Kyle says the teacher said it was super offensive because some people don't want to work out and it made them feel bad. And the principal's like, I really don't see that angle. Like, you were very gentle and you really did fall within the bounds. He's like, yes, I know. And she said it was offensive for me to like imply that people should work out. And he's like, okay, this is ridiculous. Kyle, I'm going to like ask you to leave, and I'm going to have a one-on-one chat with your teacher. I'm going to ask her for all the details. If her story doesn't line up with yours, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take her side. But if your stories line up and she stands by everything that you said, that she's said to you, then I think it's pretty likely you'll see your grade reverted. So Kyle is sitting in the waiting room for probably about an hour. And it is like the longest, most intense hour of Kyle's life. Because he knows for a fact, yes, an F in sixth grade doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. However, he also knows for a fact that if he goes home with an F, even with a good reason for it, he's going to get his Xbox taken away for at a minimum 1 week and potentially even a month or months or forever, man. Kyle doesn't know. He just knows that his parents care about his grades. So Kyle is nervous. He's kind of freaking out at least a little bit. And that's when he hears a doorknob. When like you like turn a doorknob and it makes the click? Kyle hears that. and he looks over his shoulder, and he sees the door open up, and he sees the teacher walk out. And at first, Kyle's heart drops. He thinks he's lost because the teacher and the principal are like kind of smiling and having a little bit of friendly banter, right? I don't know exactly what they said, but they said something that seemed friendly. So Kyle immediately thinks to himself, oh God, like, I didn't get it, man. Like, they're having a friendly conversation with each other. There's no way that I possibly could have won. But then, the teacher turns her head, looks at Kyle, and kind of has this grouchy snarl look. When Kyle makes eye contact with the teacher, it gives him a glimpse of hope because the teacher looks at him and looks angry. Was happy talking to the principal, looks at Kyle and looks upset. So now it's up in the air. Did Kyle get it? Did Kyle not get it? And once the teacher's gone, the principal's like, Kyle, can you come into my office? Kyle walks in. His heart's like 120 beats per minute, bro. It's going off. It's going hard. It's like he had 10 cups of coffee before, right? He's going crazy right now. And he stands at the desk, and the teacher and the principal looks up at him and says, Kyle, your grade has been reverted from an F to an A. You may now leave. This teacher actually hates men, and it's not okay. In this story, the teacher intentionally gives the subscriber and his friends bad grades just because they are men. So they get their revenge. Let's jump into it.
And we're crying, 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 like a wounded animal.
So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted this story Henry. So anyways, Henry was in class, and I'm going to give you a little bit of context that Henry didn't know at the time, but he learned after the fact, which will just make the story make a lot more sense. So Henry's teacher was, she was a woman. She was in like early to mid 30 kind of range, and she had just gone on a date with a guy several times, and she got ghosted and dumped. She had a really bad experience. But the thing is, right, you need to be able to compartmentalize aspects of your life and not let them bleed over to other aspects of your life. So basically, the teacher would go on to punish every single kid in the class who was a guy just because they were a guy. And the first time Henry realized this happened was there was one day they all had a big presentation. So the presentation was kind of like they were in 6th or 7th grade or something like this. So I think they might have had like a dinosaur unit or something. I don't know. I didn't totally get the information specifically what the presentation was about, but let's say dinosaurs, right? So the guys and the girls all chose whatever dinosaur they wanted to. They made a presentation, slideshow type thing about it. And here's what happened though. So the guys, look, here's one thing you might notice. This is just an observation I made in school, and you might find it to be true as well. Girls tend to put in a little bit more effort than the guys. That's just what I've noticed, especially, like, this is not true for every girl and every guy, obviously, but I've just tended to notice that that's kind of what happens sometimes. However, at least in Henry's class, I think on average the girls did a little bit more effort, but there were plenty of guys who went really crazy extreme and did really great presentations. And there were also plenty of girls who kind of slacked and didn't do great presentations. It was a pretty even mix, even if there was a slight, a little bit of a gender bias, like maybe the girls did a little bit better. But here's the thing. So Henry got back a B on his presentation, and he was like, okay, whatever, maybe I didn't put in the most effort. But then he turned to his friend Ben, who was like super sweaty into school, really work super hard, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. If anything, I applaud you if you spend a lot of time trying to make your stuff good, right? I mean, that'll help you out later in life in some instances. But basically, he turned to his friend who went really, really hard on this assignment. Like, Henry's friend spent a lot of time on this assignment, and he also got a B. And Henry was like, oh, that's really weird. Did the teacher give any A's? And so Henry kind of walked over to a group of girls that he was kind of friends with. He's like, oh, how do you guys do on the presentations? And they all flipped around their pieces of paper, all had A's on them. And no disrespect to one of them, but one of them did not put in the work at all. Like, her presentation low-key was worse than Henry's. So at this point, Henry started to walk around and he started to talk to all the guys, and every single guy, no matter the effort, got a B on their presentation. And he kind of looked around. He didn't know all the girls as well as he knew the guys. So for some of the girls, he would ask And for some of the girls, he would just kind of like sneakily look at their paper. Every single girl, no matter the effort, got an A. And here's the thing. If it was super obvious that every girl, this wasn't a class of 100, this was a class of like 20, 25, 30. So there could have been a chance where every girl just happened to have a better presentation in the A range, and it just happened that every guy just didn't put in the effort, so they all got Bs. But this was not the case. Like, Henry saw every presentation as you had to present it to the entire class. And sure enough, like, some of the girls deserved the A's that they got, and some of the guys, including Henry, deserved the B's that they got. But there was a pretty big discrepancy of like, why is it all A's just to girls and all B's just to guys? So at this point, Henry and his friends didn't have any proof that, the teacher was discriminating against them specifically because they were guys. But this would all change shortly. And also, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, or your teacher will give you an unfairly bad grade on your next assessment. So anyways, this next thing is when it gets super blatant. Basically, when the teacher admits to hating on guys specifically. So they were having a test coming up, and the teacher was going over the material. And the teacher had a little section at the end of the class where they would go over all the miscellaneous or just important information about the test. For example, like, you should bring number 2 pencils. You should not have your phone. This is a history class. Don't bring a calculator. I don't know why you'd bring one, but just don't bring it. Like, leave your phone in the bin at the front. It will happen at our normal. So like, kind of like information about the test. So Henry was low-key kind of spacing out because like the information is always the same. It's always the same, but like the teachers feel like they need to say it every time because, just in case someone didn't hear it the first time. It's like the rules of the test and just important information. So even if it is the same every single time, teachers kind of feel like they just need to say it either way. But anyways, there was a new thing that was added that was a little bit controversial. To say a little bit controversial is an understatement. It was extremely controversial. And it kind of confirmed Henry's theory. So at this point, Henry and the other guys in the class believed that, we'll say Miss Davenport, that's the name I use for every single teacher, that Miss Davenport was discriminating against the guys and giving a bonus to the girls for being girls, because it seemed that as if she gave grades simply along gender lines and not by actual quality of work. However, they didn't have 100% concrete proof yet. So anyways, this is when they get their 100% concrete evidence. So basically, Miss Davenport is like talking about it, and she says, also, another thing for you guys to be aware of. If you're a girl in this class, you will get a bonus 20% on the next exam. So you guys can score an 80% and get 100. But also, just so you know, you can't score 100%. So if you score a 90%, you will only get 100%, you'll not get 110%. And then she moves on to the next piece of information. Then she's like, and also, guys, remember, we're in classroom 210 at 11 in the morning, and like, Henry was like, whoa, what? So Henry raises his hand. And Miss Davenport's like, yes, Henry. He's like, so wait, what about that bonus? Like, does everyone get that bonus? And she's like, nope. Only girls in the class get the bonus. Anyways, does anyone have any other questions? And like, all the guys look at each other like, hey, yo, bro, whoa, pause, dude. What? Huh? Like, are you serious right now? Like, did I just hear this correctly? Or no, my ears must be deceiving me right now. Because there's no way I just correctly heard that you're saying that if you're a girl in the class, that you will get a bonus 20%, right? And if you're not a girl, you don't get that bonus 20%. Like before, look, she gave out all A's to girls and all B's to guys. However, coincidences happen, right? Just because there's a correlation doesn't imply causation. First rule you learn in statistics. However, she's blatantly saying that, like, dude, if you're a girl, you're big chillin', bro. You're big chillin'. Like, I got you. And if you're not a girl, like, that's tough, dude. Like, you got to study 20% harder. So at this point, after the class, Henry and his friends get together. So, at this point, the guys had already gotten together before, being like, oh my God, we all got B's and all the girls got A's. Being like, oh, she totally like hates on men specifically. But they kind of didn't believe it. Like they believed it. They thought it was weird. But they also, after this, they come together and they're just like, oh my God. Like, Ms. Davenport legitimately just exposed herself and said, like verbatim, If you're a girl, I will give you more credit simply for being a girl. And if you're a guy, that's tough. Like, unlucky, bro. I don't know. So at this point, they decide, like, Henry's like, all right, well, this can't continue on. Like, this is pretty ridiculous. If we go, but then Henry's like, wait. If we go to the front office and we tell them this, one, they're going to think that we're ridiculous or we're lying, and they're going to laugh us off. And even if they do confront Ms. Davenport, I bet that there's a decent chance that she's just going to say, oh, are you really listening to these kids? Like, a lot of the boys in the class have been goofing off together, and for that reason, they've gotten worse grades, not because they're guys. Like, you can't be serious right now that you're actually believing a bunch of seventh, sixth graders, seventh graders. You're believing them and you're not believing me, a teacher, a figure of authority. Oh, good heavens, right? So Henry was pretty smart enough to realize this. So they decided that they needed to concoct a plan, right? They needed to come together and they needed to figure out, okay, how are we going to prove that we're telling the truth? So Henry's like, okay, I got a plan. I'm gonna put my phone on recording mode, right? You know how you can record audio with your phone? You have you go in and there's I don't know, voice memos or something. I'm gonna record audio with my phone. I'm gonna put it in my back pocket so it's not super obvious. Or I'm just gonna have the phone in my hand and just not show that I don't know, that I'm recording. So either way, he found a way that he could make it obvious that he wasn't recording, but record the audio, and asked to have a one-on-one meeting with Miss Davenport to ask questions about the exam. The first couple questions will be normal, and the last one, I'm really going to press her on the 20% to girls and not to guys thing. And hopefully she says exactly what she said in class, because literally, if she just says what she said in class today, we win, bro. That's so blatant. That's so obvious. So all the other guys are like, all right, dude, that makes 100% sense. You're smart for that. Best of luck, soldier. Come back with a victory. You already know how it is, right? So sure enough, he asked Miss Davenport to meet, because Miss Davenport, would meet with students 5 minutes after class, 10 minutes for 10 minutes or something, or maybe even before class. Either way. So anyways, Henry found a time right after class. She said, yeah, I'll meet with you for the 5 minutes after class to stay behind or something. So they're in class the next day, and Henry's a little nervous because he's like, oh man, what if this recording software doesn't work? What if, she doesn't answer the questions? What if she sees that I'm recording and she's like, what are you doing there? And gets me in trouble somehow. I don't know. Henry is pretty nervous about this, which, in all fairness, I think I'd be pretty nervous too. I mean, I'm trying to have a whole sting operation on my actual teacher. In all fairness, pretty nerve-wracking, so I don't blame him, man. But anyways, right? So Henry, he gets his phone out. It's 1 minute before the bell rings. Miss Davenport is all right, well, we're wrapping up here. Remember, test on Friday, guys. People start getting up, and, Henry turns on, the voice memos, hits record, and just holds puts the phone in his pocket. Because he realizes it might not work if he holds his phone in his hand, because she might be oh, put your phone away or whatever, or something like that. So, puts it in his pocket. He already tested the night before if he couldn't hold up. He tested recording audio when it's in his hand, when it's in his front pocket, his back pocket. He even tested in his backpack, but it was way too muffly in his backpack, so he knew not to put it in there. So he goes up to Miss Davenport, and he watches as people file out of class. So the first thing he asks her is, oh, okay, so is, I don't know, the history of the T-Rex going to be on the exam? I don't know what exactly class they're taking, so let's just say history of the T-Rex, because I don't know, man. And real quick, comment T-Rex down below. So just T space Rex. That'll be the secret word of the day. Bet you couldn't have guessed that one. And also, if you haven't already known, what am I saying? These stories are on Spotify. It's in the pinned comment down below. And if you're listening on Spotify, please rate 5 stars. I think it boosts the algorithm. I'm not totally sure about the Spotify algorithm. But anyways, so he goes up there, and he's talking with the teacher about generic questions about the exam. And once everyone has filed out, he basically asks the question that is the reason why he's doing the whole meeting. He's like, so, for the bonus 20%, is that available to anyone? And the teacher, Ms. Davenport, looks at him and says, no, it's not available to you because you're a guy, and all guys suck. And this completely threw him off guard. All he was looking for was for a confession, not attacking him, bro. What? Yeah, so anyways, Ms. Davenport goes on to say that, like, yeah, she's giving 20% to all girls because they live in a world where guys exist, and guys are the worst. So she's like, you know what? I'm not taking anything away from you guys. I'm just giving a little bit extra to the girls because, girl power, and guys are the worst. And, like, at this point, bro, like, Henry's like, oh my God, like, she's not only admitting to it, but she's giving a motive as well. It's like, could I actually ask for a better sting operation? And then Ms. Davenport goes on to share personal details about her life, which is like, dude, keep that stuff out of the classroom, bro. But she basically goes on to say, like, yeah, I was seeing this guy, and I thought he was a good guy. I thought he was nice. I thought, he wasn't like all the other men. But you know what? I went out to dinner at, I don't know, Charlemont's, let's call that a restaurant name or something. And I was waiting there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. We had reservations. And the waiter had to come over and say, like, are you waiting for anyone? And I had to say yes every single time he came. And after an hour of waiting, he said, like, would you like, do you want me to get you something? And I said no, and I got up and I ran out of there. And that's when I got a text message from the guy saying, probably better if we don't see each other. All men are the worst. And Henry's just looking at her, and he's like, instead he's like, dang, that's a tough story, but what does that have to do with me, bro? Like, I'm a 7th grade student. This is some grown man. We are not the same, bro. Like, I don't know what to say. So sure enough, Henry's like, I'm sorry that happened to you, but that also wasn't me. I don't know this guy. I do not speak and act for all men, and also he does not speak and act for all men. And the teacher's like, well, you're going to grow up to be just like him because all guys are the same, So I just thought I'd help the ladies out now because they're going to need it from all the screwing over that you're going to do to all of them. And yeah, Henry's like, well, okay, haha, Miss Davenport, I will see you tomorrow in class. And he gets up and he leaves. And there's like all the guys are waiting outside. And they're like, did you get it? Did you get it? And Henry's like, oh my God, I so hope this works. Goes in his back pocket, hits end on the recording, listens back. It's like dead silence, right? Not from his recording software, thankfully, but there's like dead silence as everyone's trying to listen in. And Henry has it right up to his ears and he's like, yep, I got it. So then he goes ahead, he plays the recording, he skips ahead the first minute or two, which is just normal questions. And by the end of the recording, every guy is so freaking shocked. They're all blown away by the fact that Miss Davenport not only admitted that she is blatantly giving an advantage to girls and not to guys, but she gave a reason. And the reason was so insane. The reason was, hey guys, so a guy once did something bad to me, therefore, I'm going to punish all men. Huh? Bro? Huh? What? Are you saying everything a guy has done wrong is now on me? By that logic, every good thing a guy has done is also on me. So I guess I'm just Albert Einstein plus every good guy ever. So yeah, I mean, I guess pay attention to that too. Like, bro, what? So yeah, all the guys were like, okay, this is insane. This is ridiculous. And this is the most blatant admission of actual discrimination that we've seen. Like, this is like so like blatant that there's no way the school doesn't do anything about it. So anyways, they go to the principal and they explain it first. They don't show the recording first. They explain it first. Kind of out of curiosity to how the school would react. And sure enough, the principal kind of laughs at them and it's like, boys, come on now. I know Miss Davenport. She wouldn't do something like that. I just think that you guys are not putting in the work that you need to, and I'm sure if you do, you'll get the good grades you want. And the principal was literally about to get up and tell them to go because she has another meeting, and that's when Henry's like, actually, we have proof. And the principal's like, what? So Henry's like, so I asked Ms. Davenport for a meeting, but I recorded the meeting. And the principal's like, you really can't be recording people without permission, blah, 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 whatever. But Henry's like, okay, fair. Listen to this, though. He plays the recording, and by the end of it, the principal's kind of like fun, happy, oh, you silly kids, just work harder face, turns into this is a serious liability, dude. So yeah, the principal by the end of the recording is like, boys, I'm so sorry. Like, you have to understand, I would have never, this is unexpected. And Henry's like, look, we didn't really expect you to believe us because, like, why would you? So this is why we got the recording in the first place. And she said, I'm sorry you guys had to go through with this. We might ask you for a little bit, like for some I don't know, some questions, because this is like a full-scale investigation type thing, right? We might ask you to answer some stuff, but other than that, you guys are free to go. So yeah, let's just say that they did not have an exam that Friday. The reason was not because like the exam wasn't ready for them to take, but because Ms. Davenport was in a full-fledged investigation. Look, at the end of the day, if you're a teacher and you're giving certain people, advantages or disadvantages based on some intrinsic part of them that they can't control, whether that be, I don't know, gender, height, skin color, weight, I don't really care, anything like that, dude, that's a serious problem, right? You grade people based on, the work they put in, the effort they put in, and also how correct they are, right? You don't do it on something that they have no control over and which shouldn't really matter when it comes to this stuff. It was taken very seriously, thankfully, and Ms. Davenport was put on administrative leave, and she was allowed to come back, which is, a little questionable, and you guys can put in the comment section down below if you think she should even be allowed back at all. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. But yeah, she eventually came back, but she was gone for that entire year. So yeah, Henry actually got kind of like a permanent substitute who was a lot cooler and also didn't give girls plus 20% or better grades just because they're girls, which I think is, I would have thought is the bare minimum, but I don't know, man. I guess I was proven otherwise. Today we have a story of this teacher who completely owns this spoiled kid. I know you guys will enjoy it. It's a perfect karma story. Let's just get into it.
And we're crying, 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 like a wounded animal.
Following subscriber in today's story, John. So this all happened one day when John was in 7th grade. And John had a regular teacher in his history class. However, the teacher was sick and was pretty sick, had a pretty bad case of the cold, but happened to be out for an entire week. John didn't know this at the time, but, the substitute teacher just came in every single day that week. So his teacher happened to be out for the week. And this substitute teacher was pretty epic, was a pretty cool guy. As you will see, it's not apparent at first, but trust me, the payoff is totally worth it. There's also a bully in John's school, unfortunately. And the bully is in John's history class. History, okay. In John's history class, right? And this bully has been kind of known as like the bully for the longest time. John is in 7th grade and he's been going to the same school since he was in 1st grade. And this kid has always been known as a school bully since 1st grade, since the first year John has been there. And obviously as the kid has gotten older, he's gotten more, crueler and more sophisticated with his bullying. But he just never stopped. And John would always tell his parents, and his parents were like, oh, well, he's going to grow up someday. And let me just say, it has been 7 years. It has been 7 years of long bullying. And John's been waiting for long enough. So this all happened. Let's go to day one. So day one, John comes into class and he's waiting for his regular teacher, and the substitute teacher walks in instead. And John's like, oh, okay, I guess we have a substitute today. And the substitute is like, hey, class, like, my name is Mr. Davenport. I will be substituting for Mr. Kavanaugh because, he's sick today. And if he's sick for any other days this week, I'll be substituting as well. Like, we'll be doing normal activities. Class will be continuing as usual. I've studied the lesson plan and things will be like normal. So anyways, on the first day, class was fairly normal, and, John was sitting with his friend, Ben. Ben is not the bully this time. He normally is. Whenever I have a bad character, I always name him Ben, because we're just calling the bully. So John and Ben were sitting together, and they were doing some kind of like, some reading activity in the class or something. And that's when they look over and they see the bully. And the bully is with his other minions, So a lot of times in school, like, the bully will have like his minions that do whatever he says. And the bully had his minions in this class, and they were sitting there and they were snickering because they were like chewing, like crunching up and chewing up wads of paper and then spitting them through tubes. So kind of like spitballing people in class. And people would turn around and be like, hey, who did that? And they'd like look away and snicker. Everyone knew it was the bully, but they also didn't want to mess with the bully because the bully was known for like upping his bullying against anyone who kind of like fought back. So it was kind of just known that the best thing you could have done in that situation was kind of just ignore it, because the more or the less you ignore it, the worse it gets and the harder it is to actually ignore. And, John turned to Ben. He's like, this kid's been the worst for the longest time. Like, is anyone ever going to put a stop to this kid? Or is this kid ever going to grow up? And, Ben is like, dude, I totally see this guy becoming some executive of a company and doing this exact same thing to his subordinates. Like, I see that happening. And John's just like, dude, I know that I told my mom this years ago that he was a bully. My mom's like, oh, he's going to grow up, John. He's going to grow up. Well, he's growing up to be a bigger butt than he was before. And the thing is, right, the bully overhears this. And the bully turns around and is like, hello, John. And John's like, oh, hello there. And the bully's like, well, did I hear you guys talking about me? And Ben is like, no. The bully's like, well, I don't know. Last time I went to the doctor, last time I got my ears checked, the doctor said that they were pretty good, that I could hear quite well. So I really don't know what's going on. Because I thought I heard my name. And John's like, nope, you must have heard it wrong. The bully's like, well, I guess that's the case. And that better have been the case. Have a good day, fellas. Bully turns around, goes back to making spitballs. So John and Ben are kind of like talking with each other. And that's when John feels a wad of like wetness like appear on his neck. And he looks at it, and sure enough, it's one of the bully's spitballs. And the bully and his little minions are laughing or whatever. And Ben's like, you shouldn't, don't react, John. And John, he does kind of like he does the cool thing, but also probably not the greatest idea. He takes a spitball and he throws it right back at the bully. And the bully, it catches him on the eyebrow. And the bully peels the spitball off of his eyebrow and looks directly at John and legitimately just says, you're going to regret that. And Ben whispers dude, why did you do that? Everyone knows if you just ignore him, he'll go away. And John turns to his friend Ben and says, bro, I've been ignoring him for the longest time. Everyone ignores him and he just gets away with this all the time. And Ben's like, was that worth it? Throwing that spitball back at him? Was that really worth it? And John's like, you know what? Yes, it was. So the bell rings and everyone's leaving class. And John is quickly leaving the class to go to his next class when he immediately finds himself on the floor because the bully stood in front of him, stuck out his leg very stiffly. John tripped on it and fell right over. And John's backpack wasn't zipped up all the way and it kind of flung over his head and everything spilled out in front of it. And the bully says, nice trip, John. Hopefully I'll see you next fall. And John's like, you didn't even say the joke right. So Ben comes over, helps John get his stuff back up. And Ben's like, man, what did I tell you? You don't want to be messing with that bully, man. And John's like, you know what? I've had enough of not messing with them. You know what? This is war, man. This is war. And maybe I'm going to be the first one, and maybe I'll be the only one to stand up to this kid. But you know what? I'll be damned if no one else stands up to this kid. I'll be damned if I let this kid bully me again. And Ben's like, okay, we'll have fun being tripped. And John's like, well, it's not very funny, Ben. And Ben's like, I'm serious. This kid's going to go hard until you stop. And then John's like, well, I'm not going to stop. So the next day rolls around, right? And, John goes into school and he doesn't really think anything of it. And he goes into class and this kid is just staring him down the entire class. And John and Ben are sitting together. And this isn't an activity class. This is kind of a sit there and listen to the lecture class. And Ben kind of leans over and whispers, John. John's like, yeah, what's up, Ben? And Ben's like, dude, the bully's staring at you. And John's like, dude, I know. His eyes are piercing the back of my skull. Sure enough, right, the bully has just been staring at John, kind of smiling. And his two little minions are staring as well. And the substitute teacher at the front of the class doesn't seem to be paying any attention to this. Little did you guys know he actually is, but that's for later in the story. He comes in to be pretty epic later on. But anyways, John's like, you know what? I don't care, Ben. He can stare at me all he wants. If he really wants me like that, I'm going to have to let him down softly because I don't want to hurt his feelings. And Ben's like, dude, you're getting yourself in really deep. I don't know if this is a good idea. And Ben's like, this is a great idea. This is probably my best idea yet. It was maybe not John's best idea yet because John gets up to leave and he's very careful not to trip over anything. And that's when he's met at the end. As soon as he leaves the classroom, he bumps right into the bully who's standing there. He's like, oh, hello there, John. And John's like, hi. The bully's like, well, I don't know if you're available this afternoon, but I just gotta have a word with you this afternoon. John's like, I'm actually busy. I gotta go home. And the bully's like, I think you'll find time. I think you'll find time. And then the bully and his minions walk away. And Ben walks up to him. He's like, John, what just happened? And John's like, dude, what? He just came up to me and said, am I free this afternoon? And Ben's like, oh my God. And John's like, dude, what? He just said if I'm free this afternoon. And Ben's like, dude, no. And John's like, dude, what is going on? And Ben's like, bro, that's what he tells people before he beats them up, bro. And Ben's like, dude, what? And John's like, yeah. Or John's like, what? And Ben's like, dude, you gotta hide. And sure enough, John is starting to take this a little bit more seriously because while the bully is not that harmful, like physically, when you don't push back, in the rare cases people have pushed back, he is trying to continuously like show his authority, basically, show his dominance. Or however he chooses to do that. So Ben and John are like, John's like, all right, well, this probably isn't a good idea. We got to find a way to sneak out of school because there's like one main exit and kind of like the place where people get picked up because John rides the bus, right? There's like a place where the bus always arrives, but to get there, you have to go through this main hall. And Ben and John sit down and realize that the bully is most likely going to try and intercept them in the main hall and like pull John aside and, give him a few 1-2s, you know what I mean? And so John is like, all right, Ben, well, we gotta figure this out. So they look around, they find another exit, and so they basically decide to skip their next class. Normally a bad idea, but, this is quite the circumstances. So they're looking around, and, they look, and they're like, oh my God, here's another exit, and then they see it's a fire exit. So if they push this, they'll push the fire alarm, they'll get in a ton of trouble, it'll just be it'll be a bad situation, right? It'll be a bad deal. Real quick, if you made it this far into the video, comment bully down below, and I'll try and heart as many comments to say that. I just want to see how many people, and I also want to see the names and the faces of the people supporting this channel by watching this far. If you don't know, the best way to support this channel is just by watching the videos. It's called watch time. YouTube really appreciates that. So if you want to really support the channel, maybe now or later, sit down and watch 2, 3, 4, watch as many videos as you possibly can. And also, you can do this while gaming, drawing, trying to go to sleep, cleaning your room, literally whatever. And please go in the comment section down below and tell me what you are doing while binge watching the videos and supporting the channel. And I'll shout some people out, like the person on screen right now who is doing this. So thank you to this person on screen, as well as thank you to all of you guys for supporting the channel by binge watching the videos. With that being said, let's get back to the story. So at this point, right, John and Ben are looking around frantically, skipping a class, right? So they're taking it pretty seriously, trying to find an exit, which is not going to be the exit that the bully expects, because there's normally one main way that everyone leaves the building and then goes to the bus or goes to get picked up. And they're assuming that the bully is going to know this, which, I mean, he is going to know this, and he's going to be waiting there, and he's going to pick John up and give him the whole 1-2, right? So John and Ben are looking around, and they do find an exit. However, unfortunately, it is a fire escape. And Ben is looking at his watch. He's like, dude, we got 10 minutes till the bell rings. And John's like, well, can't we just wait it out? And he's like, dude, like, you're going to miss the bus, and then you're going to be stranded here. And John's like, I could always call my mom and say I missed the bus. And Ben's like, bro, they're going to know that you didn't leave, and they're going to come find you in this building, one of his minions at least, right? And then you're going to be stuck here probably for an hour without your mom coming to pick you up. You don't want to do this. And John's like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to walk there and just like let it happen? And Ben's like, we still got 10 minutes. We can figure this out. So John and Ben are frantically like going around the school trying to figure it out. And that's when Ben actually has the brilliant idea of John. And Ben's like, what? And John's like, what? And Ben's like, dude, I figured it out. We're not supposed to be looking for doors. And John's like, dude, what do you mean we're not supposed to be looking for doors? And Ben's like, windows, John. There are no fire exit windows. And John's like, oh. So then now they start looking around, and a lot of the windows are like glued shut or way too high or have like some screen in them. But that's when they go into the bathroom, and they find glass windows that when you like crank them, they go up, and when you crank them, they go down. There's no massive drop. It's like a 3-foot drop or something. They're not super big, but you can put your backpack through them, and then you can crawl through them as well, and it's the perfect escape. And that's when the bell rings. And John and Ben are like, all right, or Ben's like, all right, John, let's go. So sure enough, John pushes his backpack through, Ben pushes his backpack through. John gets up there, goes through the window, drops down, says it's all good, not a big drop or anything. Ben goes through, does the same thing. They get their backpacks on, and they sneak around the school, and then they see the bus, and they sprint towards the bus. And they're sprinting towards the bus, they get on it, and they both sit in the back. And when they both sit in the back, they're looking out, and they see one of the bully's minions walk out to the bus and look around, right? And that's when the bully makes eye contact with John and calls back. And John's like, dude, they see us. And, Ben's like, okay, what we need to do is we need to go to the front of the bus. And Ben's like, or John's like, why would we need to go to the front of the bus? He's like, shenanigans happens in the back of the bus, John. And John's like, okay. And then Ben's like, the bus driver will not allow this kid to beat you up in the front of the bus. And John's like, all right, totally fair. That makes a lot of sense. So John and Ben go all the way up to the front of the bus. And that's when, as they're about to leave, the bully gets on and says, oh, John, I thought we were having a little date this later tonight. And John turns to Ben and he's like, see, I told you he's into me. And Ben's like, pay attention. And the bully's like, so sad that you had to avoid us. Well, I'll be seeing you tomorrow. So anyways, the next day in history class, John and Ben are sitting together and the teacher is handing back, grades from a test that, was administered the week before. And the bully was sitting behind this girl. Let's just call her Caitlin for the sake of this. She doesn't really come up again, so I'll call her Caitlin, and if I forget, who cares? So the teacher's giving back the tests. And, John and Ben did fine. John got an A-, Ben got a B, totally fine grades. And when the teacher gives the test back to Caitlin, Caitlin ends up getting a C. And, C is, I guess, fine enough. It's not a grade you should be shooting for in a lot of cases. Maybe some math classes I can understand. But either way, Caitlin was really not happy with it. And the bully turns around and is like, oh no, the waterworks. And Caitlin starts crying a little bit. The bully's like, oh no, did you disappoint your parents again by doing bad? Well, next time, just try harder, Caitlin. And the bully turns around and his minions are laughing. And, John is like, dude, this guy's legitimately the worst. Do you see why I'm standing up to him? And Ben's like, are you really standing up to him? You're just running away from him at this point. And John's like, what would you do in my situation? And Ben's like, I don't know, be a bystander, stay quiet, keep my head down and wait till I get to leave middle school. And John's like, that's not the point, Ben. That's not the point. This kid is doing this and we're allowing it to happen. And, Ben's like, yeah, we are. It sucks. What do you want us to do? John's like, I don't know. And no one was noticing, but the substitute teacher was starting to really pay attention to everything that was going on in class, right? So after school again, John and Ben, they're going around, they're walking around, and they're trying to find, they're going to the bathroom, right? And they're skipping the last class, or they're leaving 5 minutes early from their last class because they have to get quote unquote picked up early. They faked a absentee note from their parents or whatever. So they're out of class 5 minutes early and they're both walking to the bathroom. And that's when they run into the substitute teacher. Substitute teacher's like, hey boys. And they're like, hey, Mr. Davenport. And Mr. Davenport's like, boys, I don't think you're supposed to be out of class yet. And, Ben's like, yeah, well, we have a reason. And John's like, no, we left class early. And Mr. Davenport's like, boys, you can't be doing that. And that's when John's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to tell him everything. So John lays it out and tells him literally everything. And Mr. Davenport's like, wow. I was starting to pick up on some themes going on as well as, the bully did in class to Caitlin today, but I didn't know it went down that deep. Are you boys able to get any evidence for me? And, the kids are like, what? And, the substitute teacher's like, yeah, I've actually been putting together a bit of a file recently on this kid. I was a little disturbed when I saw him trip you, and I wanted to really, really get some, I wanted to stand back. I wanted to be a bystander. I wanted to watch what was happening so that I could collect enough evidence so that this kid, who seems like a real systemic problem, could be dealt with properly. And at this point, right, John's like, wait, so you saw that all? And the substitute teacher's like, yes, but, what power do I have as a substitute? However, I do have the power if I sit back and watch and observe everything and write it down and get evidence that I can submit a real file and really get a mark on this kid's record and maybe stop him for good if he wants a future. And John's like, oh my God. And Ben turns to him and says, like, dude, we need proof that this kid's going to try and beat you up. And John's like, I don't know how we're going to do it. He always words it weirdly. And John's like, well, maybe I should go meet him. And the substitute teacher's like, I don't think that's necessary, right? Like, I don't want, like, to put you in danger. And John's like, no, but I need to get this kid gone. And substitute teacher's like, well, I don't know how much the administration would like this, but I can stand guard, and right before anything happens, I can come and break it up. And John and Ben kind of look at each other like, okay, this is like some scrawny random substitute teacher. What if, like, he really holds no authority? And John's like, well, I mean, I got to stop this kid somehow. So sure enough, right, John turns to Ben and says, Ben, you need to record everything. So Ben has his phone out, and he starts recording, right? And they walk down the halls. And Ben's trying to be, like, it's not super obvious with his recording. So he kind of, like, pretends like he's just on his phone. The flash is off. He's able to record it pretty well without it being super obvious. And eventually, so they're walking down the hall, and the bully's like, well, boys, I wasn't sure if I was going to see you today. It's great that you're here. And he's like, you know, Ben, I don't really have any issues with you. You can keep going. And Ben's like, well, I'm just going to wait for John. Will you ride the bus tomorrow? The bully's like, you know, I don't think that John will be riding the bus today. And Ben's like, well, then I won't be riding the bus today either. The bully's like, fine, well, then stand over there unless you want to become collateral damage. And so Ben does step away. And, the bully starts coming up to John. And John's like, what are you going to do to me? And the bully's like, no, I'm just going to, we're just going to have a little time. And then the bully, like, kind of comes up to him menacingly. And he's like, why did you disrespect me in class 2 days ago? And John's like, you spat a spitball at me. I just threw it back to you. That sounds fair. The bully's like, there is a rule of law here. There's a hierarchy here. Some of us are above others at this school, and I'm just here to enforce it. And John's like, how are you going to enforce it? And the bully lifts up his fist and says, this fist will make contact with your face. That is the rule of law at this school. And as soon as that happens, the substitute teacher sprints out of there and is like, hey, break it up, boys, break it up. And, the bully turns around and says, oh, Mr. Davenport, like, nothing's going on here. I'm just having a talk with my friend. Mr. Davenport's like, well, it doesn't look like that to me. John, I'm going to need you to come with me. The bully's like, no, John's staying with us. And Mr. Davenport's like, I can get the principal over here. And the bully's like, fine, you know what, John, we'll have a little talk later. Go ahead. See you in class tomorrow, Mr. Davenport. And the bully and his minions walk away. And, Mr. Davenport's like, oh my God, that was so close. Like, that was really reckless of me to even let that happen. And John's like, no, we got it on a recording. He turns to Ben. He's like, Ben, you got that on recording, right? And Ben's like, yep, got it on recording. He's like, audio? Checks it. He's like, yep, visuals? He's like, visuals are pretty good, a little shaky, because I didn't want it to be obvious. I caught it all. At this point, right, Ben, Mr. Davenport, and John, they all go back to Mr. Davenport's, like, classroom, or it's his substitute teacher. So it was, like, the other teacher's classroom, but they go to that classroom. And, John's like, hey, can you call up my mother and say I'm not going to be, like, that I had to stay late for an extra help project and that, that I'm not going to be able to make the bus. So Mr. Davenport calls up his mom, and John's mom's like, oh my God, are John and Ben in trouble? Mr. Davenport's like, actually, the contrary. They wanted to help me with an assignment, and they will be getting extra credit. And John's like, oh, that's so nice. Whatever, right? So afterwards, John, Ben, and Mr. Davenport sit down, and they basically construct a case against this kid. They construct bits of evidence. John starts hitting up other kids in his class, basically asking for testimonials. They are making a full takedown of this kid, right? Of years and years and years of just everything, right? And at this point, they end up with a really solid case file. They have enough to at least get him suspended, if not expelled from the school at this point. So the real nail in the coffin is when, Ben turns to John. He's like, John, do you remember James? And they're like, yeah, James, whatever happened to him? Ben's like, dude, that was the kid that, the bully actually beat up. And so basically, right, there's this kid who they haven't spoken to in a while, but there was, like, a rumor that, like, the reason why he was gone for a week is because he was in the hospital and, like, because the bully, like, beat him up. And when he tried to, like, say that, like, oh, the bully did it, the bully was able to weasel out of it. And John's like, dude, with all this evidence, if we got like a medical record about James and put him in the case, we could get this kid out. So they contact James. He's not really responding, but Ben remembers, oh my God, I was in like a 6th grade group chat with this kid. I have his number. So they call him up and James is like, hello. And Ben and John say, hey, I don't know if you remember us. They explain everything. And James is like, look, this kid has been giving me grief for the longest time ever I tried to rat him out. I've been out, like, he isn't giving me any more grief. Like, I don't know if I want to do this because, look, I will suffer the consequences if he doesn't get completely, like, kicked out of the school. And, you know, my name's attached to this. And then Mr. Davenport speaks up and says, hey, like, James, you don't know me, but I'm the substitute teacher, Mr. Davenport. I happen to be decently good friends with, the teacher, well, to say Mr. Kavanaugh, that was the name I gave him. With Mr. Kavanaugh, it's one of the reasons why, he recommended me to come in for this week. And he said, I will make sure that this kid gets, expelled. And the two boys were looking at each other like, wow, like, this guy's serious. And, James is like, all right, well, I don't know how much I can help, but I can definitely get you the medical records. And they're like, can you do it by tonight? James is like, yeah, I'll talk to my parents, but we'll see. And John and Ben were like, all right, we'll see. Thank you so much. Like, tonight would be the greatest. We're trying to get this in by tomorrow, and things might leak if we don't. So anyways, later that night, Mr. Davenport's like, all right, just send me the stuff on your school email. It doesn't matter. It's on school email. I don't care. So sure enough, right, the next day or that night, James sends them like a medical record. He said, this is the date. This is the injuries. Like this, like it wasn't enough to put this guy away, or not put this guy away, but get him suspended before. But hopefully, James is like, hopefully with all the other evidence you have, this will be enough to get the bully out of the school. So they send it to James. James sends it to Mr. Davenport. And Mr. Davenport is like, all right, man, like I will need you tomorrow bright and early. I'm going to excuse you from all your classes. You're coming with me. We're all going to go into the principal's office and we're dropping this bombshell. So the next day rolls around, as it always does. But this was a special day. They all walk in. John, Ben, and Mr. Davenport walk to the principal's office. They sit down. John and Ben explains everything that's happened, not just this week, but ever. And Mr. Davenport explains all the things he's observed. And the principal's like, wow, this is quite a lot. And Mr. Davenport's like, well, this isn't it. And Mr. Davenport then sends like the terabyte large, okay, it's probably smaller than a terabyte, but the very large file that they've created with all the evidence, with all the references, with all the people's testimonies. And the principal's like, wow, this is intense. And Mr. Davenport's like, it's really thorough too. And so basically, right, the principal's office, like, we need a couple days to go through this. And the principal's office, like, Ben and John, you guys can be excused for the next couple days. You're not suspended. You're not anything. But if you want to take the next couple days off just for your own protection as we vet through this, that's totally fine. So John and Ben were like, oh, shoot, of course. The school contacts their parents. They explain that they're not in trouble. It's for their own safety. And John's mom's like, oh, John, you should have told me about this, whatever. So a couple days go by. And that's when Mr. Davenport emails John. And the headline of the email is, the verdict is in. So John immediately, he sees the notification on his phone, and he immediately opens up the Gmail app, and he's just swiping and refreshing, and he eventually opens up the app, gets in there, opens the email, and it's one line saying,
click on the video on screen
"We
right
won."
now. I know you'll enjoy it. Just click it. Do it.
Do you guys have that one kid in class who is just so entitled and a massive jerk? Well, imagine for a second if your teacher humbled him in front of the entire class. That'd be pretty satisfying, right? Well, today, I have a gift for you. In today's story time, there's a kid who is an entitled, massive jerk. And the teacher decides to destroy him in front of the entire class. Let's jump into it. So in today's story, we're going to call the subscriber who submitted it Austin. So in Austin's class, there's a spoiled kid. We're going to call the spoiled kid Ben, but I'm probably going to interchangeably use Ben and spoiled kid. So when I say Ben or either spoiled kid, I mean the same guy. So a little bit of context about the spoiled kid before we jump right into the story. So anyways, the spoiled kid comes from a very, very rich family, which is totally fine. Like, if any of you guys come or know people that come from rich families, a lot of people are totally cool that come out of them. However, there are a handful of kids, especially kids, and also a lot of adults I've found, that because of the money that they were given or they were born into, they somehow believe that they are better than everyone else and that they actually worked really hard to be randomly born into this family, and they kind of act that way, and it's pretty funny. However, the spoiled kid, or Ben, was one of those people. So Ben kind of became a massive jerk. Maybe it wasn't only because of his money. Maybe he was just going to be a jerk no matter what because of the way his parents raised him. But either way, he was a massive jerk who was also a rich kid, spoiled brat. So let's jump into the story. So this all started in Austin's class. So Austin has history class with Ben, the spoiled kid. And Austin and Ben never got along really well. They started not getting along well when they were paired up to be partners in the very beginning of the year. And let me just say that Ben did not do his fair share of the work, because when has Ben, the spoiled kid, ever done his fair share of the work? Because remember, he's the type of kid who believes that he is simply entitled to a good grade because he shows up, and that why would he have to do the work of the peasants around him when he is royalty himself? That is legitimately the way that he views the world, guys. Don't forget that. So one day, as the class is ending, I think Ben, the spoiled kid, I think he was just looking to, put down other people. Maybe he's feeling extra insecure about himself. Maybe, a lot of things could have been possible. So as the spoiled kid and Austin and everyone else in the class are dismissed from class, as they're walking out, the spoiled kid, Ben, starts going up to random people and being like, "Where did you get those shoes? From the side of the street? Ha ha ha. Where did you get those shoes? They look like you found them in a horse's butt." Just like the dumbest stuff you've ever heard. Look, if you're going to demean someone, at least be creative about it. If you're going to have jokes on someone's appearance, on someone's physical, don't do that stuff. But if you're going to do it, at least be creative, bro. Don't be like, "Dude, it looks like your shirt came from the crappy shirt store." It's like, bro, did you spend even 1 second trying to come up with a good joke? Can you at least try? If you're gonna insult me, dude, at least try. You know what I mean? And also, so Austin didn't come from a really poor or his family wasn't that underprivileged, right? It wasn't that bad, but he definitely didn't come from a family with money. His food, he got food every night. He had clothes, he had heating in the winter, he had, a house, a place to sleep, he had a loving family. Life was pretty good for him. But he also didn't have $10,000 Gucci bricks or whatever, Supreme bricks like the spoiled kid would have, right? So yeah, the spoiled kid was looking around for other people as they were walking out of class. The spoiled kid was basically looking for other targets, other people that clearly didn't have his super expensive shoes, Louis Vuitton shoes or whatever, right? So sure enough, he sees Austin, and Austin has the same pair of shoes that he's had for the last 3 years. They're a little bit torn up, but I don't know about you, but I would wear shoes to the ground. I don't really care that much. I remember I was playing, tennis once, because that's something I used to play back in the day, and I literally felt the I felt the tennis court through my socks because there was a big old hole at the bottom of my shoes. And I just didn't even notice. I was like, whatever, it works. So obviously when the shoe literally fell apart, I had to get a new one. But Austin was kind of the same way. And so, yeah, Ben comes up to him and says, "Where did you get those shoes? The poorhouse?" And Austin's like, "That's funny, bro. You're really creative for that one. Dude, did you spend all night coming up with that? Because you just sound like a genius with such a good joke like that." And Ben looks at him and kind of gives him this this look of "Don't insult me, you peasant." And he literally says, "Don't insult me, you peasant," and then walks away. And Austin is just oh my God. The thing is, Austin isn't even taking it this personally, because he just knows that Ben is just this type of kid to do this. He just knows that Ben is the type of dude to do this stuff. So he doesn't even take it that personally. However, this is something for you guys to pay attention to for later on in the video or later on in the story. Someone was paying attention to this. The teacher, who was sitting in his desk, maybe grading papers or organizing assignments or getting ready for the next class. He overheard this as Ben and Austin and all of his kids were walking out of class. However, he did not decide to intervene yet. Huge emphasis on yet, because this would not be the end of this, right? The teacher would come in clutch later on. So anyways, that is the first incident of the spoiled kid. This is the second incident of the spoiled kid. So anyways, the spoiled kid was a jerk, and he was a jerk to all of his classmates. And you guys got to remember that he was super entitled and believed that he deserved everything. And that didn't just stop with like physical items. He also believed, and he truly did believe, that he was entitled to all the ladies as well. If he spoke in the direction of a lady, that they must understand that he is a king and that they must respect his authority and date him, which is completely ridiculous, completely backwards. Yeah, definitely powerful men and rich men tend to have better, like, more options. Like, that's just kind of how it goes. However, dude, this is 7th grade and you're not powerful and you're only rich by default. And also nobody cares, bro. Like, in reality, nobody cares. However, the spoiled kid had this extremely inflated ego. Ben would just be like, he would literally go around telling the other guys, guys, I'm so sorry that you guys have to be in the same dating pool with me, because I know it's like super hard when all the ladies know that I'm number one and you guys are like number 20 billion. Like, there's literally 20 billion spots between me and you that are reserved for me. And they're all like, dude, like, chill. Because, like, no disrespect, but a little disrespect. Bro, the spoiled kid was not like the greatest looking kid ever. I mean, maybe he'll grow out of it, but this is, look, okay, I'm not trying to be mean. This is just what Austin told me. And if you want to submit your own stories, my Instagram is in the description. DM me there. Austin just told me that the ladies didn't really find him that attractive, in combination of how he looked, in combination of how he acted, probably mostly because of how he acted, but he didn't have the looks to make up for it. This was not some baby DiCaprio, bro. This was some baby, I don't even know. Boss baby? I don't know, dude. But anyway, so yeah, the spoiled kid also believed that he was entitled to all women. So let me just say, when a lady decided to reject him, he was not so nice to her back in a way you really can't be. So anyways, this part happened the next day. So once again, it happened in class. And the truth is, so much more, the spoiled kid could have been on so much more nonsense, but this is just the nonsense that Austin and Austin's teacher observed. So anyways, in the very back of the class, some of the girls would sit, and one day the spoiled kid decided that it was time for him to give the women of their history class an opportunity to be courted by him, the spoiled kid. Oh my God, Ben wants to court me. This is the greatest day ever, said nobody ever and never ever will, right? I'm being so mean. But anyways, the spoiled kid kind of deserves it. So the spoiled kid makes his way to the back of the class, and Austin literally just knows right off the bat exactly what the spoiled kid is up to. And Austin is just like, oh God, like, this kid has no, like, social awareness at all. Like, oh my God. So the spoiled kid walks to the back of the class, and he sits right next to this girl who we'll call Ava, right? And Ava is very pretty. Like, good. That's what Austin tells me, right? Austin says that everyone thinks, okay, you know, very pretty girl. Like, even Austin has a little bit of a crush on her too. A little bit, right? Austin doesn't want Ava to know, so obviously I'm using different names. I'm mixing up details and stuff. But yeah, Austin was a little bit jealous when Ben went back and sat there, because he's like, dang, dude, I wish I had that confidence. But unfortunately, Ben's confidence, or I guess fortunately, right? Ben's confidence was not really based on anything he should be confident about. So yeah, basically the spoiled kid Ben sits down right next to Ava, and Ava kind of looks at him like, hello, sir, like, hello, question mark, exclamation point, question mark, upside down question mark, exclamation point again, like, hello, like, and he's like, hey, Ava, what's good? She's like, things are good. He's like, oh, what did you do yesterday? How's your day been? She's like, I was here in class with you. Today has been good, I guess. And Ben's like, ha ha, nice, ha ha ha. She's just like, okay, this is a little weird. Okay. And Ben's like, yeah, I'm just stretching. And you know, like, when someone like stretches out to like put their arm around someone. I don't know if you've ever seen like, I don't know, maybe on a couch. Imagine you're on a couch and you're sitting next to that girl and you guys are pretty sure that you have mutual feelings. So, but you don't want to just like go over and like kiss her because like, yo, you got to chill with that, bro. You got to chill. That's not cool. So, but anyways, you want to like imply that like, I don't know. So you like stretch out your arm. You're like, oh, I'm stretching. I have no ulterior motives. Psych, I do. And then you put your hand like all like your arm rested across like the top of the couch. She notices that, and that's when she will lean in a little bit, and then you swoop the arm around, and it's like, wow, you got the girl, bro. Check plus, right? So this normally works on a couch or maybe a movie theater, maybe. However, they're sitting in class, and the spoiled kid Ben is like, oh, I gotta stretch. I was working out so hard. I was bench pressing like 10,000 pounds yesterday, which, guys, is physically impossible, and also he probably couldn't bench the bar, bro. Like, let's keep it a buck. And he's like, oh, stretching from all the working out and doing. And then he reaches his arm to like try and like have it around her, but it was like he was awkwardly far away because the desks were like spaced by like a foot or something. So if he actually tried to put his arm around her, he'd literally just be able to touch the fingertips on like the tip of her neck. Like it would have been so weird. So she kind of like leans a little bit to the left. So now she's like out of reach, and he basically like swings and misses and almost falls out of his desk. Austin is watching this entire thing go down. He just can't believe his eyes. He's like, oh my God. And spoiled kid like recovers. He's like, oh, sorry. I lost my balance there. And Ava's just sitting there like, dude, I don't know how to make this clearer. But no, no, dude, no. Yeah. So, but the spoiled kid does not take no for an answer, which is not a good, that's not a good thing. Maybe in business, but not in relationships. Take no for an answer, guys. If they say no, it means no. And if anyone says otherwise, do not be friends with them. That's a big liability, bro. But anyways, right, so sure enough, the spoiled kid's like, so... do you know I also have a singing career, Ava? I'm actually just like Justin Bieber or whatever. She's like, Justin Bieber? He's like, yeah, same thing. I'm basically as good as him. And like a bunch of dudes from Los Angeles, Nevada, they were like, dude, you're so good. She's like, Los Angeles, California. He's like, dude, whatever, same country. Oh my God, yeah, so I'm probably gonna have a singing career. So if you want like a singing boyfriend or something, like I'm just saying. And Ava's just looking at him like, what? What does that mean? He's like, baby, 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 ah. And at this point, Austin's like, oh, hell nah, bro, what the huh? Baby, 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 ah. Yeah, he was, he heard one song by Justin Bieber and was like, dude, I can do that. And, yeah, I don't know if that... oh, my God, dude. Yeah, so Austin is just in shock. Like, this kid is actually playing himself. Like, he's actually taking the shotgun and just blowing his freaking foot off, bro. Like, like, I know the whole expression, shoot yourself in the foot, but he is Gatling gunning himself in the foot. He is nuclear bomb blowing up his foot right now. What is he doing? So Ava is just, like... okay, what? And he's like, baby, 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 oh, dada, would you be mad? I don't know the lyrics that well, guys, I'm sorry. And then, like, he starts rapping, like, the ludicrous part. I don't know if you know that song, but it's like, baby, Justin Bieber has, like, the most dislikes on YouTube for a while, got, like, a bajillion views. So in the middle of rapping the part that Ludacris raps in the middle of it, I don't know how that goes, and I'm also not going to try. I've already done enough in this video. She's like, okay. Like, Ben, you're really good. And Ben's like, dude, I know I'm really good, bro. Like, that's what all the movie stars that I really know, that's what they were saying to me. I don't know. Like, that's what they're telling me. Like, they're like, you're really good. So... I'm just saying, like, if you want to hop on the wave before other people hop on the wave, like, you could be my girlfriend. I'm just saying. And Ava's like, oh, God, what do I do? Bro. And Austin is just like, oh, my God, like, what? Like, dude, what? Like, genuinely, like, what? What's she supposed to say here? Yeah, so Ava's like, ha, ha, ha. Actually, I have total faith that you're going to be really famous. And the spoiled kid cuts her off. He's like, well, then you should, like, totally date me then. Because, like, do you want to hear it again? Babe. And she's like, no, I'm good. But look, I'm in 7th grade. I'm just trying to have fun. I don't think I want to date any boys right now. And he's like, well, I'm not any boy. I'm him. I'm Timothy Neutron, bro. I'm literally him, dude. And Ava had to tell him that even though he was definitely Timothy Neutron and definitely Justin Bieber 2.0 and more famous, that he could not be her Selena. She could not be his Selena Gomez. Like, I'm sorry, it just can't happen. And the spoiled kid is like, I don't think you know what you're doing right now. Like, I know that you're really starstruck by my raw talent and extreme relatability. And, like, I know that it's really a lot for you right now. And I get it. Like, I totally get it. Remember, Austin's watching this whole thing go down. And he's, like, trying not to, I don't know, pass away from cringe. Here lies Austin. He was a good man. But unfortunately, he passed away from stage 28 cringe attack. It was really unfortunate. I'm so sorry, Miss Austin. I'm so sorry, right? Anyways, yeah, so, and the spoiled kid is like, you don't know what you're doing right now, Ava. He starts tearing up a little bit. You don't get it. I'm Timothy Neutron and you're nothing. And gets up and just, like, runs to the front of the class and sits down. And the teacher, like, this was all, like, a little bit before class. This was over a span of, like, 5 minutes, right? Because the teacher kind of gives them a little time to get ready, to unpack, whatever. And so this wasn't the bad thing. The spoiled kid is about to do something pretty bad that the teacher sees after class. So anyways, the spoiled kid is, like, I don't know, regaining his confidence in the front of the class while the teacher's teaching. And eventually, the class comes to an end again. And so sure enough, he starts to believe that no, she's wrong, and he is Timothy Neutron. Him is the secret word of the day, guys. So comment him, H-I-M, if you made it this far into the video. I'd love to see how many people made it this far. I love seeing the comments. By the way, you can listen to these on Spotify. It is the pinned comment down below in that link. It's also in the description. But also, if you're listening on Spotify, thank you. And please rate 5 stars if you haven't already. I think that helps. I really don't know. And let's get back to it. So anyways, class is dismissed. And the spoiled kid, like, gets up. And he waits. Remember, Ava's sitting at the back of the class. And the spoiled kid is sitting in the front of the class. So the spoiled kid gets up to the front of the door and waits. And Austin sees this, and he's like, why is the spoiled kid waiting? Because look, if Austin was in Ben's position, first of all, he would never do what Ben did, right? He would never, that's just not a thing that would happen. However, the spoiled kid, or Austin was like, if I was in the spoiled kid / Ben's position right here, dude, I would bolt out of here. I would try and never see Ava ever again because of the nonsense I just pulled off. I would do my very best to never be in contact with this woman ever again for my own sake because I just, like, did the most embarrassing thing ever. And look, not from Austin, me, Connor Pugs, right? The storyteller. I've done a lot of embarrassing stuff. I once did something so embarrassing that I think I refused to ever tell it on the channel. And I'm saying it here. If this video, and you can start, like, commenting if this happens to remind me, if this video gets 3,000 likes, which is more than usual, I normally get about 1,000, so 3,000 likes, I will tell the most embarrassing story of when I completely embarrassed myself to a girl. Yeah, I did something so embarrassing. It's so bad, it's so funny, and it's so cringe, and I've never told it, but if we get 3,000 likes on this video, I will. You can hold me to that. Anyways, right, so, Austin notices this, and the thing is, so Ava walks up to the front of the class to leave, because class is over, and that's when the spoiled kid's like, hey, Ava, And she's like, yeah. He's like, I just want to let you know that you're mid AF. You're trash, you're ugly, you're lame, and everyone hates you. Ha. And by the way, I'm going to be so cool, and I am, and I'm the greatest. Goodbye. And he like sprints out of there. And look, here's the thing. You can't be telling people that. Thankfully, right, Ava was just like, what? Because like she knew that like this kid was like weird, so she's like, okay, whatever. Here's the thing, guys, you can't be saying that to anyone, but especially I know just from like talking that like, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are girls, and like I just know that like it's a lot harder to be a girl social. It's different socially, but not harder in some cases, easier in others. But one thing I will say is they do care about like mean comments like that. They hurt guys, but I just know for a fact that like it really digs deep for girls. So you can't be saying stuff like that. And the teacher overhears this and he's like, So now, guys, remember, the teacher has overheard 2 things that the spoiled kid has done. And now for the third and final straw. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. This is on top of everything else why the teacher decided to completely go off on the spoiled kid in front of everyone. And it was freaking amazing. So 2 days later, let's call it a Friday, right? They had to do a presentation in front of the entire class. And they were given this project like that Monday or maybe last Friday. And it wasn't that big deal. It wasn't that big of a deal of a project. This teacher just liked the kids to like get up there and present and just to work on those skills as well. Because in 7th grade, you're not really like, I don't know, fine-tuning what you want to do. You're trying to have a wide range of abilities and skills, and you're just learning. So the teacher's like, okay, history is good and all, but I do think that they like honestly would benefit more from the tools of history, like learning how to present history instead of just learning facts about history. So the teacher was pretty cool like that. So yeah, he was a big fan of presenting, big fan of group projects, big fan of work, learning how to collaborate, learning how to present, all this kind of stuff. So they were put into pairs, and Austin was with some other guy. I don't know, let's call this guy Kyle, right? So Kyle and Kyle and Austin, they were together, and so everyone got a partner, and on this day, on that Friday, people went up to present. Kyle and Austin were the first 2 to go up and present, right? And it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's a pretty easy presentation. One thing I will say is, like, I used to have a lot of, like, stage fright in a sense. Like, I would get really scared doing public speaking. I am totally fine with it now. I'm pretty confident doing it, but that's just through practice. And if you guys are worried too, or you guys get scared, just know that it gets better. It gets better. I can't say it's going to be ever perfect, but just know that it does get better. But anyways, hopefully you won't have a spoiled kid booing you during your presentation, which is what is about to happen, right? So yeah, sure enough, Austin and Kyle, they go up there in front of everyone to do their presentation. And the teacher asked, who wants to go up first? And this is like, Kyle and Austin were like, you know what? I guess we're going to have to do it, man. I guess we're going to have to be the ones to step up to the plate today. So yeah, Kyle and Austin get up there, and they have one of like, so Kyle is holding like a board, like they made a cardboard board with like pictures of whatever historical events. And Austin, the one had like a sheet of paper with bullet points so he could go through a presentation or whatever. They were given a lot. They could do kind of whatever if they wanted to do slideshows, if they wanted to do board. They could honestly just do information, but they said, teacher's like, visual aid's a good idea, so I suggest you guys do a visual aid. And guys, if the teacher ever suggests you do something, you should do it. That's a little piece of advice. If they say, oh, it's not required, but you really should, then you really should. So Kyle and Austin are doing a pretty good job up there until they hear, boo, this freaking sucks, dude, boo. And like people don't boo each other during class presentations, bro. Like Kyle and Austin were both just like, what? So Austin looks, and in the middle of the class, he sees where the booing is coming from. This spoiled kid is like, boo. You guys suck. This is super lame. But and at this point, the teacher notices who it is. And it's just like, instead of immediately saying to quiet down, I think something snapped in the teacher. Because remember, the teacher has known about the spoiled kid for a while. He's known that the spoiled kid went around calling people poor. He knows that he called a girl ugly and lame. He's now booing people in the class presentation. So the teacher stands up and is like, Ben, Ben shuts up immediately. The whole class shuts up. Kyle and Austin are dead quiet. Because this teacher was a chiller, bro. He was never like yelling at people. He never even he never even had a harsh tone before. And this teacher stood up and was like, Ben! So everyone's like, oh, word, this guy's actually going in, dude. And he looks at Ben. He's like, Ben, you've been so much this week. Earlier this week, you went up to your classmates and you made fun of their shoes because you were born into a born into a wealthier family. Do you think that you earned those shoes, Ben? Like, bro was doing a psychological trip on this guy. Like, he was going crazy, and everyone's like, oh, whoa. So sure enough, the teacher's like, do you think that... And he starts, like, slowly walking towards Ben. Like, this is like a crazy horror movie type situation. I don't even know. He's like, do you think you earned those shoes, Ben? And Ben's like, what? Like, I guess. He's like, you think you earned those shoes, Ben? And you think your classmates, do you think they deserve to have worse shoes? Do you really think that you're intrinsically better? And Ben's like, a little bit. He's like, well, you're not. He's like, okay. And the teacher's like, and also, the way that you treat your female classmates, right? And the teacher doesn't say anything specifically. He doesn't, call out Ava, obviously, because that's not good. You don't want to bring light to the specific, but you can bring light to the general. He's like, I overhear you calling them ugly and stupid. Well, maybe it's not something you want to do. Especially, those who live in glass houses shouldn't be throwing stones, little guy. He's like, what? Basically, the teacher just called him, ugly and stupid, but in, a roundabout way, so it wasn't super obvious. And, Kyle catches on. He's like, oh, my, bro, what? And, yeah, he turns to Austin. He's like, dude. And Austin's like, oh, my God. And finally, the teacher's like, and finally, if that wasn't enough this week, your classmates decide to go up there and do a nice presentation, and you boo them. Who boos someone during their class presentation? And Ben's like, I don't know. I was bored. And the teacher's like, well, you're not going to be bored for very long because you and I are going to take a long trip to the principal's office. And you will hear about everything that you've done, and we will come to a punishment together. Guys, I'm sorry. The presentations, we're going to do them on Monday because I'm going to be busy this class. You know what, everyone? Don't leave the classroom, but you're free to do whatever. Recess on me and your friend Ben. Thanks to Ben, you guys are having recess today. And Ben's like, word, we have recess? Let's go, dude. And the teacher just looks at him. This has a long stare. And Ben's like, oh, crap. Because Ben realizes, oh, wait, no. I have to go to the principal's office. I'm the reason why they're having recess. Because he has to deal with me, bro. So, yeah, Ben and the principal walk out and they go to the principal's office. And Austin, right, is like, word, recess, bro.
Sometimes teachers say some pretty crazy stuff, and today is no exception. In today's story time, this teacher teaches her class that men have no feelings and men have no rights and that men are completely useless. Yeah, let's just jump into this crazy, crazy story. So we're going to call today's subscriber who submitted this story Nicholas. So anyways, this all started one day in class, and Nicholas had this teacher who was always a little bit strange. But just one day, she just went completely mask off. She just went straight into the deep end. So let's jump into it. So one day in class, teacher has some off comments, some really weird comments, and let me explain. So Nicholas is just sitting there, and he's with his friends, and he's not going to lie, he wasn't paying the closest attention ever. He wasn't the most dialed in because, man, I don't know, sometimes English language classes, learning about gerunds and pronouns, dude, I kind of don't care. I know how to speak English either way. Bro, I'm sorry. So yeah, I get it. And Nicholas was not paying the utmost attention. But when he just happened to zone back in at the right moment because the teacher was saying something and was like, okay, guys, so we're going to learn how to use something, right? He said, so here is our example sentence. Men are trash. And most people weren't paying attention, but Nicholas was. And he kind of looks at the board. And he's like, hey, bro, what? Huh? And he turns to his friend. He kind of nudges his friend a little bit. He's like, dude. And his friend's like, oh, what? Because he's on his phone or whatever. And his friend looks up. He's like, wait, does that say men are trash? And Nicholas is like, yeah, the teacher just wrote that as the example sentence. And they were kind of both looking at each other a little bit confused because they don't really know why the teacher wrote that. It doesn't make a ton of sense to them, but they're kind of like, maybe it's just a really weird example question, right? So the teacher acts as if she wrote the most normal sentence on the board. She was acting like she was like, she wrote, pigeons can fly, or ducks can swim, or the house is big. That's the same thing as saying men are trash, bro. What? Yeah, so this was just the first inkling of just this first little observation that something was not right here. And let me just say that the teacher goes from a little subliminal messages to freaking megaliminal. I don't know. She just like the next day, she goes super mask off. So leaving class, Nicholas kind of turns to his friends. He's like, dude, that was really weird today. And everyone was like, yeah, dude, like what even went on? Like why did that come up? Because the teacher like said, oh, this word is like a pronoun. This one is a noun. This one's a verb. Just like dissecting the men are trash sentence, and then just moves on to another sentence. And Nicholas is like, it was so weird. It's like she just threw that up on the board and not really understanding anything. So basically, this teacher has a agenda against men. Hates men, right? Hates all the boys. And the thing is, this teacher wanted to try and teach everyone that men were terrible and that men must be destroyed and eliminated with subliminal messages. So this teacher was like writing stuff on the board, like she would write, cats are nice or whatever, the tree is big, to do like, I don't know, like grammar work. And then she'll just write stuff like, men aren't necessary for the survival of the human race. And everyone's like, hey, yo, bro, pause, what? Yo, chill, dude, huh? And so she's trying to slip this stuff in. But I think the teacher realized that she needs to go even more aggressive with her teachings. If she's going to really teach people that men are useless, she's going to have to straight up tell them. So the next day in class is probably the craziest day in class that Nicholas has ever had. This is the most ridiculous thing. So guys, strap in. This is crazy. So Nicholas walks into class, assuming it's going to be another normal day of English language class. He's going to learn about his sentence structure. He's going to learn about new vocab words. He's expecting it to be a normal day in class, man. I mean, why wouldn't he? But he walks into class, and today, let me just tell you guys, the teacher is not about to teach anything about the English language. She's about to teach something a little bit different, as you guys will see. And by a little bit different, I mean it's freaking insane. So anyways, they walk into class, and the teacher has nothing on the board. Normally, the teacher has written a bunch of stuff on the chalkboard just to kind of like jump into the lesson. But today was different because the teacher was just going to be speaking to them. She was just going to be teaching them, teaching with massive quotations, from the heart. She was going to speak to them directly. So she was just sitting down. She like brought a stool to the front of the class and sat down in the stool and was like, guys, come on, come in. Everybody sit down. We have a very special lesson today. And by very special, I think she mean absolutely insane, bat crap crazy, bro. So when everyone sits down, the teacher is like, all right, guys, we have a very special lesson today. I think we've done a lot of great work with, grammar recently. So I thought I'd have a more important lesson, because I believe, in school, you need to learn more than just technical things. Like you need to learn more in math class than how to find a square root. You need to learn more in English class than how to figure out what a gerund is. You need to know more in history than what day, George Washington was born. And I agree with this idea. I think we need to learn more in school than just the facts and whatever. A lot of school is socializing, learning how to do research, learning how to do hard things, time management, obviously, right? But this teacher twists this idea and says, so today I need to teach the girls something. Guys, sit, you can't leave, but this lesson is really for the girls. So at this point, Nicholas kind of turns to the boys and they're like, yo, what? And the guys kind of look at each other, and also the girls are kind of confused too. They're like, why would English class only apply to us? And I think some of them were kind of bummed. They're like, wait, we need to do work, but the guys don't. They were probably thinking that the teacher was actually being in favor of guys for a second, but they would realize this is not the case, as the teacher is like, girls, I need to let you know something. Men have no feelings. They have no feelings. Statistically, research has said that men have no feelings. And like Nicholas is like, wait, bro, what? Huh? What are you saying right now? And yeah, and the English teacher legitimately goes on to be like, yes, I was talking to my scientific peers, and they have said that there's quite budding evidence that men have no feelings. And Nicholas is like, what? Like, I get it. I'm kind of a bot, bro, but what do you say? What? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean I have no feelings? And she's like, yes, ladies, you must understand something. As women, it is our primal nature to ruin them. You must ruin every man you see. And Nicholas is like, am I in a fever dream right now? Like, are you serious right now, bro? Like, what is going on? So Nicholas turns to his friends. He's like, dude, what? And the teacher goes on to be like, yes, look, I can cite my sources, but I don't want to, which means that so it's like saying, oh, yes, here's a piece of information. And someone asks for the source, and you're like, citation me, motherfucker. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, the teacher's like, yeah, so men have no feelings. And ladies, repeat after me. I must ruin all men. And like everyone in the class is like, what? And some of the girls are like, I must ruin all men? So one of the girls raises her hand and she's like, but Miss Davenport, I have a lot of friends that are guys and they do have feelings. And Miss Davenport's like, oh, Sandy, you sweet, sweet girl. That's just men trying to trick you into thinking that they have feelings so that they can wreck you. Don't let them wreck you. You must wreck them first. Like, the girls in class are, like, super uncomfortable with all this. And the guys in class are less uncomfortable because they just are just so shocked. They're like, bruh. Like, huh? What? Yeah. So the class continues on with Miss Davenport sitting at the front of the class, instructing all the women that they must ruin all men. They must ruin them. And, yeah, let me just give you guys a little bit of context as to why Miss Davenport is not so happy with men. Yes, she has recently been dumped by one. Yeah, this is why she's going on a crazy tirade. So basically, Miss Davenport, apparently, right, this is what I'm told by Nicholas, who is told by a friend, and like, okay, I don't know, but I'm going to tell you what I was told, right? Miss Davenport had recently been dumped in like a 3-week long relationship, so it's not like, oh my God, we've been together for 6 years, I built my life around someone, which is totally valid and that sucks. Dude, it's been 3 weeks. Get over yourself. He's probably like, oh, hell no, after just knowing more about you, apparently. And then, like, she's like, oh, my God, and goes on Twitter for 1 second, sees a bunch of, like, yes, no, he's the worst, queen. You're the best. Destroy them all. Like, sees all that kind of garbage, right? And it's like, oh, my God, this is facts, guys. This is facts. Yeah, so anyways, she decided that she was going to bring that to the classroom and that she was going to save the women there by telling them that they must obliterate all the men. Like, bro, what? Huh? Yeah, so anyways, the class ends and Nicholas, like, walks out of class and immediately turns to the boys. And they all just stop there. And they all, like, burst out laughing. Because they're taking this seriously because it's like, they're like, wow, this is crazy. But I don't know about you guys, but has it ever been, like, something is just so surreal and absurd that you just can't help but start laughing? Like, they were literally they just broke out laughing because they just couldn't they just couldn't control themselves. They're like, what just happened? Like, that might have been the most insane thing that I've ever been through. So you thought that class was crazy. Nicholas thought that was the craziest class that he will ever go to. However, you and Nicholas, if you believe that, are not prepared for the next day, because the next day rolls around and Nicholas enters class having no idea what to expect. Partly he was believing that, Miss Davenport was like just coming out of a bad relationship, which she was, and was just venting, which she was, and that even though it was super inappropriate for her to say any of that, and especially to like dedicate an entire class to that, Nicholas was almost 100% certain that next class would be different. Class. Class is the secret word of the day, so if you made it this far into the video, comment class down below. And by the way, while you're down there, in the pinned comment is a link to the Spotify where you can listen to all these stories. And also in the pinned comment is a link to my second channel where I post daily memes. I'm posting daily on there now. Please subscribe. I'm just starting to post, so I really could use some support. And also, if you're listening to this on Spotify, rate 5 stars. It helps out, and let's get right back to it. So anyways, Nicholas is like, okay, there's no way that she's going to spend another class saying anything like this. Wrong! Miss Davenport decides to spend the next class doing this, but saying something even crazier, bro. So anyways, we get into class. We being Nicholas and everyone else.
They sit down, and Nicholas is like kind of prepared to like take out his pencil, learn about verbs or whatever. But the second he walks into the classroom, he realizes that it's going to be another nonsense session because he walks in and once again, nothing is written on the board. And Ms. Davenport is sitting in that little stupid stool that she brought to the front of the classroom to have a heart-to-heart with the ladies, right? So Nicholas is like, oh, hell no, bro. Oh, no. He's like, oh, God damn it. God. So, because he already knows, bro, it's already going to be another crazy session. So he sits down and like he turns to his friend, who's a guy, and he's like, dude. His friend's like, yeah. He's like, dude, it's going to be crazy today. And his friend's like, yeah, I'm prepared. I have no idea what's coming. And they were not prepared for this because this was actually insane. So basically, Ms. Davenport is like, hello, everyone. Today, I actually have a presentation. So for a second, Nicholas is like, oh, okay, we're going back to normal stuff. So she attaches her Chromebook or whatever to the projector and starts to project slides. So one would believe, okay, multiple choice question. Comment A down below if you believe that on these slides, it's information about, I don't know, verbs, pronouns, gerunds, sentence structure, clauses, stuff that they're supposed to be learning about in school, at least in this class. Or comment B if you believe it is a slide about how men need to have their civil rights taken away from them. Bruh. If you commented A, you are a sweet, loving individual, and I hope the best for you. If you comment B, then you're very cynical, but unfortunately you are correct here. It was B. Yeah, so the first slide is just kind of like the cover slide, why men should have no rights. And everyone in class is like, huh? Excuse-moi? Huh? Like, come again, my friend? Am I? No. I must have something in my ear. Like, I must have something jammed up in there because there's no way I heard you correctly. There's no way I heard that correct, right? No way. Yeah, so they get there. And Ms. Davenport is like, all right, so first slide. Men should have no right to vote. We should take that away from them. Ladies, listen to me right now. Men, stay quiet. They're all like, what? She's like, look at the government body right now. Most of them are men. We need to change that. And it seems like the only way to change that is to have only women vote. And let me just say something. Yeah, there is a disproportionate representation of men in bodies of Congress and government or whatever. But those are elected positions. And last time I checked, there are actually more women in the United States. And bro, if you wanted to vote only women in, you probably could if you got all the girls together. You say only vote for women, right? What do you mean you got to take men out of the equation? You probably still have the same people elected, bro. What? Yeah, so she's like, yeah, so we need to legally get rid of their right to vote. And they're all like, the girls in class were like, Miss Davenport, doesn't that break some amendment? Or something like, are all people supposed to have rights? And she's like, well, we can change that, Sally. Did you ever hear about changing amendments before? Yeah. So the rest of that class was just explaining about how every single right, that at least in the United States, right? Every single right that you're given should be taken away from if you're a man. And the entire class is like, what? What? And they leave the class, and Nicholas turns to his friend. He's like, there's no way this gets crazier. No way. Yeah, so unfortunately, bro, it kind of does. Because the next day, Nicholas is like, okay, there is no way that, she's got to stop. She's got to be stopped. Either she's got to stop, or she's got to be stopped by someone else. There's no way this can continue. But here, let me just say that if you guys thought the last two were pretty crazy because saying that men have no feelings, that's pretty crazy. Saying that, men should have their rights taken away from them because they're guys. I'm sorry, I got the peen when I was born. Bro, I'm sorry. I apologize with all my heart, but come on. Yeah, if you thought that stuff was crazy, then you guys need to prepare yourselves because this day is the craziest day. This is the most insane, absurd statement ever. So I think Miss Davenport must have been spending 1,700 billion hours per day on TikTok and Twitter to come to such brain rot of an opinion as she's about to share today. So she comes in and she's like, guys, I have a very important discussion for us. Because once again, Nicholas already knows that he's about to see some nonsense because once again, nothing's written on the chalkboard. She has her stupid little stupid little stool, in the front so she can sit down and have girl talk again, right? And she's like, all right, let's be real here, guys. Let's be real. I really don't think men need to exist anymore. And everyone's like, bruh, what? And she's like, yeah, I really just like, guys, hear me out. I don't think we need to have men anymore. I don't think we need them in society. I mean, now women can fertilize themselves. Ew, lol. Like, bro, stop saying fertilize to a bunch of random, like, middle schoolers, bro. Chill. This isn't health class. But she's like, yeah, they can fertilize themselves. So I was thinking, you know, life would just be easier if we just slowly eradicated all the men. And everyone's like, huh? What? What are you saying, Miss Davenport? And she's like, well, I don't know. Maybe just, I definitely am for the movement. And I've seen it on Twitter of forcefully destroy all men. And they're like, bruh, what? So at this point, Nicholas is like, yo, dude. Yo, dude. Yeah, so let me just say that, to put it lightly, the class was very uncomfortable with Miss Davenport saying that, you know, all men should be doinked, right? That sounds pretty bad. I don't know. I just feel like deciding that everyone should be nerfed if they have some characteristic that they can't control, or even if they can control, like, yo, dude, that's a little sus, bro. That's a little, So yeah, this was like the most insane class ever. And Miss Davenport was like, guys, it's just an opinion. Like, I'm allowed to have an opinion, guys. And, like, everyone's like, yo, bro. And, like, she was like, ladies, don't you agree with me? And, like, looks at all the girls in the class. And all the girls in the class are like, no? Yeah, so, when people walked out of class that day, like, literally every single person in class, like, stood outside the classroom. Guys, girls, Nicholas, everyone. And they're just like, that was insane. That went way too far. And Nicholas is like, what are we going to explain? Like, what's going to come tomorrow? So at this point, he's thinking, tomorrow in class, like, that's going to be even more insane. She's literally, if we just chart this on a graph, she's literally going to come in with like with a machine gun and blow up all the men, bro. Like, what the frick, bro? Yeah, so anyways, they're all like, damn, what is she going to say tomorrow? So anyways, the next day comes around, and Nicholas walks in, and he's just like wondering, like, okay, what's going to be today's daily dose of nonsense from Miss Davenport? However, he walked in, and there was no Miss Davenport. Instead, some like random old guy was sitting in her desk. So Nicholas is like, oh, no Miss Davenport today? And this guy says, yeah, no Miss Davenport today, and tomorrow, and for the rest of the year. I am your new teacher. Everyone, this is a good time for me to announce it. Hi, I'm Mr. Stevenson. I will be your teacher from this point on. Ms. Davenport is no longer teaching at the school for a difference of opinions. And you guys were in the middle of, verbs and sentences. So pull out your books to chapter 7. So yeah, bye-bye, Ms. Davenport. I will be smoking that Miss Davenport pack. L. So spoiled kids are extremely annoying. They're super entitled. And today, a spoiled kid just starts getting away with so much and just is so annoying that he actually makes the teacher, who's been teaching for like 15 years, quit their job. Yeah, this is a pretty crazy one, so buckle up, subscribe if you're new to the channel and enjoy story videos, and let's just jump right on into it. So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted today's story Luke. So anyways, in Luke's class, there was a kid who we're just going to call the spoiled kid, and they had a pretty major assessment that was coming up. So the teacher decides to put Luke and all the other classmates, including the spoiled kid, into small groups to review. So basically, they've had an entire week to study for this test. It's like one of the major tests that will have a pretty big impact on the grade. So they're put into small groups to kind of just go over material, just kind of like go over stuff that they need to do. And so they're in the small groups, and Luke happens to be put into a group with the spoiled kid. And the spoiled kid almost immediately starts, I don't know if it's bragging or just, I don't know what this is. I think it's bragging, but I'm not sure. He starts telling everyone in a bragging tone that he has not studied at all. So all the kids, including Luke, look at him a little bit confused and also a little bit concerned, because this wasn't some easy class that you could kind of figure out. I think this was like biology or something. It's one of those classes where it is really memorization based. And in maybe some, I don't know, other types of classes, you can kind of wing it. However, in memorization, like heavy classes, it's a lot harder to wing it because it's less about common sense and more about information recall, which you can't really wing information recall unless you're literally attached to the internet through like Elon Musk's Neuralink or whatever, right? So yeah, the kids in Luke's group with the spoiled kid kind of looked at the spoiled kid with this look of concern, and like genuinely just concerned about him, because they're like, bro, how are you actually going to make it through this exam? Because like Luke and all the other kids in the class had actually been studying for this for a while. Because I think this was actually an AP class. I think this was AP high school biology, which is known for being a very difficult class. I mean, different classes, different schools can teach it at different levels of difficulty, but it is overall a very difficult class. So Luke pipes up and says, bro, like, you should probably start studying, like, for your own good and your own, like, success. You should really consider, like, studying, bro. Like, you really should consider studying. And the spoiled kid looks at them and says, no, not have I only not studied, but I don't plan to study at all. And guess what, guys? I'm going to get an A, and I guarantee it. So all of them look at the kid like he's completely delusional, which, I mean, he is a little bit, but also he knows the thing that they don't know. His daddy's a big shot freaking lawyer, bro. Yeah, so basically the spoiled kid had a father who was a lawyer and was like one of the most successful lawyers in like their state. Like he was always like representing he was doing all these things, right? And he also ended up owning his own law firm. Like he was very powerful, very successful. And here's the thing, they're children of successful people, and sometimes they turn out to be, really great driven individuals who are humble and grounded, and they just happen to have more resources at their disposal. So sometimes they use that just to, to elevate themselves and to be able to do even more. However, other kids sometimes will let the kind of like the resources and power that, their parents and family have go to their heads as if they were the ones who rightfully earned it, right? As if they didn't just luckily spawn into existence into the right family, dude. Yeah, so this sort of entitlement definitely followed around Luke. And unfortunately, the spoiled kid. And unfortunately, the spoiled kid's parents completely encouraged this type of behavior. They would, whenever the spoiled kid would have a tantrum, they would basically back him up. So because of that, he was super inflated, like inflated ego, inflated confidence, inflated just like everything like that. So the spoiled kid was basically bragging about how the fact that he hasn't studied and he doesn't need to study. The thing is though, Luke and everyone else in the group with the spoiled kid, they don't realize that the spoiled kid is going to pull the daddy is a lawyer card. They just think that this kid's going to frickin' fail. So they keep trying to tell him, dude, like, this is really hard. Like, we've been studying for even more than a week. Like, we've been preparing for this even before we knew that we had a test. Because they were told about that they were going to have a test in a week, but it was kind of clear what the material was going to be on, or what the test was going to have on it, because it followed this very sequential order of everything, right? So a lot of them, including Luke, had actually just been reviewing after every single class, because not only this, they wanted to do well on the AP test too, and so it makes a lot of sense to review as you go along, not even just for tests. It'll make studying for the AP a lot easier. Have you guys ever taken an AP class in high school? If you have, let me know down below. I took a few, but anyways, right, so Luke is looking at this kid in this kind of like feeling of like, oh geez, bro's actually gloating about failing. Yeah, so little did he know that the spoiled kid had a trick up his sleeve. So anyways, after the spoiled kid brags about not studying and not planning on studying, but thinking that he was going to do super well, everyone in the group just assumed that, okay, we tried to warn this kid that this is a hard exam. He's not heeding our warning, so like at the end of the day, what can we actually do? Like, what can we actually do about it? The answer is probably nothing. So they decide that they're going to go ahead and continue on doing what they're supposed to be doing in the first place, which is studying for the big exam. So yeah, sure enough, they study for the rest of the period, and the spoiled kid just completely goes on his phone, not even paying attention. So in other stories, like the schools have been stricter about going on your phone. However, this school, it's kind of less enforced. There is a rule against blatantly going on your phone in class, or at least teachers are given the ability to enforce the rule really strictly. However, this teacher really did kind of abide by the, if you want to learn, you'll learn. If you want to like goof off or whatever, you can goof off. And especially since this is an AP test, it's like the teacher probably is thinking, if you don't want to study for the AP test that you're paying for and need for college, yeah, I mean, go for it. Like, if you want to do all the studying on your own or like not pay attention to my class, like I'm not going to like force you to. So the spoiled kid was literally just on his phone the entire time while everyone else was preparing for the exam. So finally, the next day, Friday, comes in and it is the first exam. It's really difficult, or at least that's what Tom says. And even the people who put in a lot of effort, including himself, and studied, they did pretty tough. Like, it was really hard. And by like the average was like a B minus, which a B minus is not a bad grade, but it's definitely like I'd say average grades for a lot of things are like Bs, high Bs, not really A's, not really C's, unless you're in like a college physics class or something. Hey guys, the average is at 24%. Congratulations, you all did amazing. It's not like that. This is still high school. However, let me just say that the spoiled kid was the very lowest score. So basically, the teacher goes on the board before handing out the tests and says, all right, guys, so before I hand back the test, I kind of just want to show you how this like scatters out. I know some teachers who do this, and it's always kind of interesting, but also a little humiliating if you learn that you actually did the worst. So he says, all right, so he goes on the board and he says, the high on this test was a 90, and the lowest score was a 12. And he said, and then he kind of like drew a kind of like, you know, one of those like bell curves, but he didn't do it like a standard distribution. He kind of like had the curve go way up around the 70 to 80 range. He said, okay, the majority of the test scores were in the 70 to 80 range. We had a few in the 50s, a few in the 60s, majority in the 70s, and a few and a lot in the low 80s. And 190, which was not 190, but 190%. He says that was the highest. So the teacher then goes ahead and walks around handing out the tests. And as soon as the spoiled kid gets his test, he looks at it, but he doesn't have a look of like shock. Like sometimes when spoiled kids are really arrogant and think that they'll just be a genius and be able to pass their test because of their sheer genius ability and epic mind because they were always told by their parents that they were geniuses. No. So not in this case. The spoiled kid in this case knew that he wasn't going to do well. So instead of having a shocked reaction, he looks at it and simply very calmly raises his hand. So the teacher, expecting like a little bit of commenting from the kid who got an 11%, right? But didn't really expect the commentary to come as a class question. The teacher kind of expected the spoiled kid to ask to meet with him after class or during a free period, and they'd go over the test together and how the spoiled kid can salvage his grade in this class. However, it looks like the spoiled kid wanted to get attention for this in front of the entire class, so, the teacher's like, however, whatever, right? So the teacher looks up and says, yes, spoiled kid, what is it? So the spoiled kid looks at him and says, we're going to call him Mr. Davenport. Some of you guys have been asking, why is every teacher name Mr. or Mrs. Davenport? I used the name once, and then similar to me using Ben as the secondary character, I'm just not creative, and I like routine, so I've just been using it every time. So we're going to call the teacher Mr. Davenport. And Mr. Davenport looks at the spoiled kid and is like, yes. And the spoiled kid, stands up and looks at Mr. Davenport and says this in a forceful yet calm manner. This spoiled kid is a lot more, I don't want to say competent, but a lot more confident and a lot more tactical when he goes about being a spoiled brat. He looks at this teacher and says, if you do not change my grade to an A, I will sue you and the school. So the entire class was not quiet, not like speaking super loud, they weren't all talking, but what the light hum of kind of like a little bit of talking, a little bit of movement that was present before this kid said that cuts out immediately, and it is dead, empty silence. So everyone is just kind of like, oh, damn, did this kid actually just say that, bro? So yeah, the teacher Mr. Davenport has a very stunned look on his face because, I don't know about you, but if I was a teacher and some kid very calmly stood up and said, hey, if you don't change my grade from a fail to an A, I'm going to, sue you and the entire school. Yeah. So the teacher kind of laughs a little bit because genuinely, how do you react in a situation like this? And is just come again? So the spoiled kid looks at him and says, yeah, I think you heard me the first time, but if you don't change my grade from an 11% to a 90%, basically from a fail to an A, I'm not only going to sue you, but but I'm going to sue the entire school. And this school will come crumbling down. So at this point, this is when the subscriber, Luke, realized that the spoiled kid did have no intention of studying, but he didn't have any intention on doing well in the test from like the first time around. The spoiled kid had no intention of studying because he was going to basically threaten his way to an A. Look, there's a lot of strategies of doing well in high school. I do not suggest this one, guys. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys could pull this off. I know I certainly couldn't, but I really don't suggest this. Yeah, so sure enough, Luke and everyone else in the class, they're just like, oh my God, like what did this kid just say? And, you know, the teacher's looking at the spoiled kid. And the teacher, like the kind of like the smirk, laugh, smile the teacher had on his face, that wasn't really because he thought it was funny, but just because he was completely taken off guard, slowly dissipates as he realizes that the spoiled kid did just say what he thought he said, and also said it with completely seriously. So the teacher kind of makes his tone serious as well and says, you know, I will not take such threats in my class. Like, you're going to sit down and nothing's about your grade is going to change. Like, you didn't put in the work, you performed poorly, and because of that, you threatened to sue me. Like, that's insulting. Like, just sit down. I'm not hearing anything else from you for the rest of class. So the class is like super silent as this kid sits down, as this is pretty crazy. Like, this is like, whoa, because this teacher was pretty chill. I mean, I don't know. He wasn't like, I'm going to be your best friend, but you kind of don't want your teacher to be your best friend. You don't want them to be so ridiculously out of touch that they like, I don't know, like that they can't actually like relate, or they make things really hard not realizing because they're just so out of touch. But you also don't want your teacher to be your best friend. Because, you know, they're supposed to have a figure of authority over you. They're supposed to be your teacher, not your friend. However, while this guy was very chill, they've never seen him lash out at anyone. So it was pretty uncomfortable for them to see this, even though everyone agreed this was a totally justified response. Because I don't know about you, but if I was a teacher and some kid threatened to sue me, I don't think I would just be like, oh, okay, that's fine. That's a totally normal thing that normal people say. I think I would recognize how insane of a thing that was said just was. Like, I think I would, I don't know. I think I'd be upset as well. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree. You can let me know in the comments if you'd like. So here's the thing. Luke and everyone else in the class kind of assumed that the spoiled kid was pulling a massive bluff. They kind of assumed that the spoiled kid did not actually believe that he was going to be able to sue the school or that anything like that, or even try. So some people, not Luke, but Luke learned a little bit later on, but other people knew that the spoiled kid came from a really powerful lawyer-type family that owned a law firm, and his dad was specifically one of the top lawyers, whatever, in the state. But at the same time, they were just like, no way that his dad is actually going to go along with it. Like, even if the spoiled kid, right? The spoiled kid might say, I'm going to sue you. But at the end of the day, the spoiled kid is not going to sue the teacher nor the school. It would really be the parents who own the law firm, or sue them individually. Who even knows, right? And no one in the class thought that the parents would actually stoop that low. However, this is where they were wrong. Because, let's just say that the spoiled kid threatening to sue was not the most ridiculous thing. Sue. Sue is the secret word of the day. So if you made it this far into the video, comment Sue, which is S-U-E, down below in the comment section. I'd love to see how many people made it this far into the video. And while you're down in the comment section, make sure to check the pinned comment. In the pinned comment is a link to my Spotify account, in which I have all these story times uploaded on Spotify. So if you want to just listen to them as a podcast and help me out as well, go ahead and do that. And also in the pinned comment, final thing is there are two channels, one which I post meme kind of type videos, and the other one are story times, but they're specifically Reddit story time videos. If you can, go ahead and subscribe to both those channels and perhaps watch those videos. It would help them out a lot as they're a lot smaller, and your viewership goes a long, long way, especially whenever you're trying to start a new channel. So anyways, let's get back into it. So sure enough, basically what happens is the spoiled kid, his family gets in contact with the school. Yeah, so basically his family gets in contact with the school, and they, I don't know exactly how they do it. I don't know exactly what they say. They don't, okay, there's no way that they actually say, hey, like my son failed an exam because he's an idiot, but because we have money, we're going to threaten to sue you unless you change it back. They basically said probably something along the lines of some kind of BS like emotional damage, unfair, something, a bunch of other stuff, legal jargon, basically saying that we're going to drag you through the mud because we have the money and resources too, but we'll totally let this go if you make things right with our son. Correct his emotional damage by forcing an A in the class, right? So the thing is, the teacher, this is literally the worst news ever, and it is delivered to the teacher in the worst way possible. So the next day in class, everyone's sitting there, spoiled kid is sitting there, spoiled kid's pretty confident, even though at this point I don't think he even knows that he is going to win this. Yeah, guys, the spoiled kid actually wins for once, which is terrible, I know. And so the teacher is midway through teaching something about biology. I'm not sure what he's teaching. I took biology such a long time ago, man. I think it was a good class. But anyways, one of the faculty/staff members walk into the room. They say, hey, Mr. Davenport, can I just talk to you for a second? And Mr. Davenport's like, okay. Mr. Davenport walks outside, has a conversation. So the thing is, the subscriber Luke doesn't 100% sure know that this was a conversation exactly when Mr. Davenport learned the truth. Or not the truth, but what he had to do. But either way, he eventually learns. However, when Mr. Davenport walks back into the classroom, he is very clearly a little bit shaken up and also quite a bit angry/upset. Because either he was just told, or, I don't know, maybe he was informed that he really had to. He thought it was a joke. That basically, he had to change the spoiled kid's grade from an 11% to a 100%. From a fail to an A plus or an A, however you want to go about it. Simply because the school genuinely just saw that this family would drag them through the mud and burn them through all their resources for a case that wouldn't even amount to anything. And the only thing they had to do was basically change this kid's grade back. Yeah, it's pretty messed up, I'm not going to lie. And the teacher, Mr. Davenport, also thought it was pretty messed up. Yeah, so Mr. Davenport was just super weird for the rest of the day. Probably because he learned that he needed to basically give someone a fake grade, something that they didn't earn after threatening, which is after doing something insane, basically awarding the worst behavior ever and also giving someone a grade that they didn't deserve. All because the school was scared of this family, right? So the next day in class, the spoiled kid walked in 15 minutes late. And Mr. Davenport, while being pretty chill, was not a fan of, not showing up on time. He didn't care if you were a minute late. I mean, maybe if you're 3 minutes late every single day, no matter what, he'd be like, dude, just leave, walk a little faster, maybe don't take the same. I don't know. He would figure it out, or if there's a genuine reason, I don't think he would care. But he didn't like kids when they were late, right? He'd always give them a hard time. So the spoiled kid shows up 15 minutes late. And the reason why the spoiled kid showed up so late was not because, I don't know, he got out of class late, or even because a genuine reason. The reason was because the spoiled kid learned from his parents that the school had instructed Mr. Davenport to change his 11% to 100% and that he was going to have to go through with it. So at this point, the spoiled kid basically learns that he won and that Mr. Davenport will be forced to do whatever he says, practically. So the spoiled kid walks in 15 minutes late. Mr. Davenport turns to him and says, why are you 15 minutes late? The spoiled kid says, I didn't feel like coming here on time. I come on my own schedule. And Mr. Davenport's like, no, that'll be deducted from your grade. You got to be showing up on time. You can't be showing up 15 minutes late. And the spoiled kid's like, I don't know, Mr. Davenport. I kind of think I can do whatever I want. So yeah, he sits down and Mr. Davenport is very, very obviously very angry and steaming. However, he also seems a little reserved, a little bit held back. And Luke has no idea that the school has told Mr. Davenport that he needs to change his grade. So at this point, Luke is massively confused because he's like, wait a minute, this kid just blatantly disrespected Mr. Davenport. And he looks and sounds extremely angry, but he didn't pursue this. This makes literally no sense. So Mr. Davenport just starts teaching, tries to get through it, And that's when the spoiled kid basically just keeps taunting him. Spoiled kid raises his hand because Mr. Davenport asks a question. And the spoiled kid raises his hand and says, doesn't really matter for me, might matter for those guys. I don't know the answer and I don't really care. And everyone in the class is just so confused by this answer. They turn around and they look at him. They're just like, what? And then after turning around and looking at the spoiled kid, they immediately turn to Mr. Davenport because they're like, oh my God, Mr. Davenport's going to chew him out again. Like some of them are rooting on for Mr. Davenport to just rip him a new one because they're like, this kid is literally the worst. He sucks. And I really like seeing a spoiled kid getting owned by their teacher, right? However, Mr. Davenport looked at him and Mr. Davenport gave a long, cold stare, but he didn't say anything. And Luke was so confused. Luke was going to learn the truth in a couple of minutes. Stick around as Mr. Davenport does kind of blow up on him in class. It's very entertaining. But anyways, Luke is just really confused at this point. He doesn't know what's going on. And he's like, what? Like, why is he putting up with this? So finally, the spoiled kid, after Mr. Davenport goes back to teaching again, the spoiled kid basically breaks the last straw. It's the last straw that broke the camel's back at this point. So the spoiled kid just starts playing a video on his computer. So kids weren't even really supposed to have their computers out, but for some classes, you bring a computer in, and for other classes, the teacher would be like, hey, can you not have your computers out? And biology was one of the classes where the teacher asked very nicely, like, don't have your computer out. We don't have any need for it. And I know it's just going to be a distraction. Because let's be real, guys. If you have your computer out in class, if you're not playing Jump or the Dinosaur Jump game or Slither.io, or if you're not just like doing stuff on it, bro, what are you doing on that computer? I guarantee you, bro. I sometimes sit in the back and I have a full perspective of everyone's computers. No one is doing what they're supposed to be doing, which in most cases is just paying attention. They're not paying attention, bro. If I'm a teacher, those computers are shut. Because I know for a fact, no one's paying attention to me if their computers are open. That's kind of how it goes. But the spoiled kid not only takes out his computer, but he starts really loudly watching a movie. Like you hear the 21st Century Fox thing, like the da-da-da-da, like very loudly. It's very clearly a movie. So the whole class turns around again and sees the spoiled kid put his feet up on his desk, recline back, and literally opens up his backpack and pulls out a thing of popcorn. Yeah, the spoiled kid was planning his moves to be as disrespectful as possible. He literally popped popcorn in advance just so that he could be disrespectful to Mr. Davenport. Yeah, I'm not even kidding here. So at this point, Mr. Davenport stops what he's doing and he asks nicely, like, spoiled kid, could you please not play a movie in class? And once again, Luke and everyone else in the class is like, huh? Like, why is Mr. Davenport not going in? Like, he would go in on anyone else, and some of the kids were probably getting a little bit mad. Like, what is the special treatment to such a jerk of a kid, right? And the kid's like, nah, I don't think so. And he literally just continues to watch, and he pops more popcorn. And that's when Mr. Davenport just freezes. He doesn't say anything for literally 60 seconds. I think Mr. Davenport was really thinking, and what I'm about to do, is it really worth it? And eventually, Mr. Davenport came to the conclusion, yes, what I'm about to say is worth it. So Mr. Davenport takes walks over to his desk, has all these papers on it, and literally swipes all the papers off angrily and forcefully. Papers go flying, and as he does it, he says, I'm done. And the whole class is like, oh my God. He's like, that's it. I quit. Mr. Davenport has been a teacher for over 10 years. And one thing that the kids don't know about Mr. Davenport is that he isn't like a lot of teachers. A lot of teachers, they need their jobs, or not they need their jobs, but they don't get paid a lot as teachers, right? Unfortunately, one of the most important professions gets paid somewhat near the least, especially when you compare it to how important it is, right? So the thing is, Mr. Davenport was not like most teachers. Mr. Davenport wasn't originally a teacher. He actually made a lot of money being like a stock guy before. He was in hedge funds and stuff like that. However, he made enough money and then wanted to pursue something that he felt was more meaningful and where it didn't really matter how much he got paid. And that happened to be, teaching. So Mr. Davenport was actually like a multi-millionaire, right? And he happened to work with the spoiled kid's dad. So he knows all about it, right? So Mr. Davenport, at this point, is really just teaching for fun. However, this recent thing that happened, which having to give a kid a false grade and letting him boss him around was a little bit too much. And Mr. Davenport decided that it wasn't worth it. So the whole class is completely silent because Mr. Davenport just like slammed all the papers off his desk and screamed that he quit, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, so that's when Mr. Davenport decides to go in on the spoiled kid. So the spoiled kid kind of straightens up his back, takes his feet off of his desk, and pauses the movie because Mr. Davenport has gotten his attention, to say the very least. So Mr. Davenport starts walking in on the spoiled kid. He's like, everyone, I want you to know something. This kid's family threatened to sue the school. That if I threaten to sue the school unless I change his grade from a pitiful 11% to 100%. And guess what? One of the faculty informed me that I needed to do this. And so everyone's like, oh my God. So everyone starts freaking out. They're like, oh my God, right? And the spoiled kid has a little sense of like arrogance and smirk or whatever. And that's when the teacher goes in, Mr. Davenport's like, spoiled kid, you're so confident. You're so full of yourself. It's like, do you really believe that you've done anything? And the spoiled kid is like, my family, ... whatever. But Mr. Davenport catches him off. He says, yeah, your family, not you. You've done nothing. You've achieved nothing. And everything in your life is not because of you. You've contributed nothing. You're a little leech who's digged his little fangs into the side of our society and sucked it dry. And the spoiled kid was like, whoa. Because the spoiled kid had never been spoken to like that before. And the spoiled kid's like, I don't think who you're messing with. And the teacher screams back at him because remember, this teacher used to be a super successful hedge fund millionaire, whatever, and he's kept his identity pretty low key. However, he's also still kept up in the world. The teacher screams back at him, I don't know who you think you're messing with. Spoiled kid did not know this, right? So the teacher goes on to say, class, I'm sorry. I cannot do this anymore. As much as, I love teaching, the school is corrupt if they'd let something like this happen. The school is corrupt, the system is corrupt, and from this day on, I quit. And the teacher begins to pack up his stuff. And the spoiled kid has a little bit of a smile on his face because the spoiled kid believes that he's won. And that's when the teacher says, oh, spoiled kid, I got to let you know something. Just so you know, you didn't get away with this. You didn't get away with this. And the spoiled kid kind of speaks up like, spoiled kid's a little shaken up at this point because this is like a crazy turn of events, right? But the spoiled kid speaks up a little shakenly, but a little bit more confidently than he would have been a minute ago. He's like, how did I not win this? I got my A and you quit. And the teacher's like, spoiled kid, do you think I've been a teacher for my entire life? And the spoiled kid's like, yeah. And he's like, no, there's some things you don't know about me. I never had to be a teacher in the first place. In fact, and he's like, you know what? Might as well let it all go. I'm no longer a teacher after this point, so it doesn't matter. I, in fact, am a multi-millionaire. I used to live a completely different life, and I left I left my job behind to pursue teaching. I haven't needed to teach a single day, but I came in every single day to do so. And he looks at the spoiled kid, and he's like, you know what also? You know what happened when I worked in the world of finance and business? I met a lot of people because we consulted with a lot of really big organizations. And some of these big organizations were schools. In fact, I've met with almost every board of a pension fund of every major college in the United States. And at this point, the spoiled kid's like, uh-oh. And the teacher's like, I just want to let you know something. I will individually reach out to them and let each and every one of the colleges know who you are, what you stand for, and what you've done. And I guarantee you, doesn't matter what SAT score your parents pay for, it doesn't matter what extracurriculars that you make up, it doesn't matter what other fake grades you get from bullying other teachers, you will not get into any of those schools. And for once in your life, you will get into a school, you will get something that you actually deserve, my friend. And with that, the class is dead silent right now, because this is like the most mic droppiest mic drop of all freaking time. And so the teacher walks back, closes up his suitcase, clicks it, walks out the door. The kids are literally silent for the last 10 minutes of class. Today we have a story time of probably one of the worst teachers I've ever heard of. This teacher has an agenda and actually fails students because they're not overweight, and tries to sell her own books in class constantly. This is a pretty crazy teacher story that I know you'll enjoy, so sit back, relax, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let's jump into this story. So we're gonna call the subscriber who submitted today's story Nate. So anyways, this was the first day of 7th grade. And, on the first day of class, you go and you see all the new teachers and all the new classes and all the new students in your classes. It's a very exciting time, but it also is a little stressful. And it's also the time where you'll basically scout out and probably make a pretty good educated guess on how difficult your classes are going to be and which teachers are going to be the difficult teachers. So yeah, let's jump right into it. On the first day, Nate goes into his English class, and he sees the teacher, and she has short blue hair, right? She has a big flowery skirt on, and she's on the somewhat larger side. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this. In fact, I think larger people on the internet get way too much hate. However, if you're telling people that, obesity is extremely healthy, and that you would fail them in class if they're skinny, like this teacher will, just stick around, then maybe that's not the greatest thing to say. Anyways, though, everyone sits down, and the teacher's waiting for people, and she says, all right, class, welcome to English 115 or whatever. Today we'll be in this class, we will be researching literature and having class discussions, and kind of goes through the very basic whatever. On the very first day, Nate didn't get any really obvious red flags except in the last 5 minutes of class. So in the last 5 minutes of class, the teacher says, oh, and by the way, besides the required texts and readings that you have been assigned and will have to buy, let me point you to my personal store. Yeah, the teacher literally starts advertising her own personal store in the middle of class. So this teacher did a lot of her own research. And this isn't like an academic that does research at some school or institution, because normally academic research needs to be peer reviewed. It needs to be checked over by a lot of people. No, this was her own personal research. And on the store, because she went to the link, she said, okay, on our little class, because there was they used Canvas. I don't know if you guys know what Canvas is. It's basically a nice place to, or not a nice place. It's a terrible, scary place. But it's a place that organizes classes really well. And she said, on our Canvas page, here's a link to my store. And sure enough, there was a link to the store. So the teacher and goes on the projector and clicks the link, or airplays or whatever, clicks the link to her store and starts browsing and showing off all the stuff that they could buy. First of all, I'm pretty sure this has to go against some kind of terms of service, some kind of rule for a teacher. And it definitely was a little bit unethical, because while she didn't explicitly say students who buy stuff from my store will receive better grades, she somewhat kind of alluded to it. And one of the most, the number one bestseller, according to her, maybe it sold 0 books, but, number one place at 0, I don't know, was a book or a research paper book type thing that was talking about how obesity is actually the healthiest body, standard for your body, and that everything else is not just unhealthy, but unethical. And it was a quote-unquote research paper, but she didn't do research, so it was peer-reviewed basically by herself and her one Twitter follower. Yeah, so look, I'm not a scientist, and I definitely have not done research, but I will say that probably most people can agree that, obesity is not the healthiest state to be in. I will say that, different bodies can handle different, levels of weight and still be healthy. Just because you have more weight on you than another person doesn't necessarily mean that you're less healthy. It really is a case-by-case situation. However, I think we can all agree, or at least in my opinion, we should all agree that obesity is definitely not associated with peak and ideal health, and that you should definitely not be telling people that they should be obese, and not being obese is unethical. I think we can all agree to this. But basically, Nate was like thinking that this class was going to be totally normal until the last 5 minutes when the teacher shows off and basically highly and strongly encourages them to buy from her store. And her store, it's not just the fact that she wants, her students to buy from her store. It's the fact that she was basically alluding that you would receive a better grade if you did buy from her store. That's definitely where things got really messed up. Anyways, though, let's go a couple weeks into class. So the teacher would have a few more red flags, a few more really strange things, and Nate and his friends took a deep dive into her store, and apparently it was one of the craziest things ever. Not just a paper saying that obesity is healthy and not being obese was unethical, but there was a whole thing, right? It was a rabbit hole. She literally made a book that you could purchase, which was just a compilation of her tweets. She literally said you can buy a book that is just going on twitter.com and printing out every single one of her tweets as a new page in the book. Probably this was not a great selling one. This one probably didn't receive Amazon's #1 most sold book of all time ever award. And if it did, it was probably issued by the teacher herself. But for a little while, there were only a few red flags, a few weird things that she would say. For example, she would for some reason, there was text that she had them read, and it was describing, it was describing a character, and it was a novel or whatever. So it was describing a character. And the whole point of reading this was to look at okay, look how this author uses words well, or is known for being a good writer. How does he describe whatever, right? And I think the character that was being described happened to be muscular or something. I think they were describing some lumberjack. And in the text, it was and in walks I'm not going to do a good job, but basically describes his physical appearance. And that's when the teacher drops a little bit this guy must be extremely unhealthy by the way he's being described. Only healthy people are 400 pounds or up. And everyone's bro, what? Everyone kind of pauses for a second, but This teacher doesn't miss a beat. She keeps going, and she keeps talking as if she didn't just say one of the craziest things ever. But other than a few small things like this, nothing too bad for Nate. However, it's about to get really, really bad. Yeah, so anyways, let's go about a couple weeks later after this point. So the first couple weeks were really just reading text and understanding what makes good writing. And this teacher actually was quite good at English. She was quite a good writer. She, understood what made good writing. I'm not trying to completely discredit the teacher, at least in those professional manners. However, I think the rest is pretty damning. Anyways, so this was their first time to have an actual writing assignment. And so they write up a paper, and there are certain requirements. There were certain, you had to follow certain grammatical rules. You would be judged on how well you describe the characters, all this kind of stuff. Because you were tasked to write your very own little short story. And so, Nate and other people in the class wrote their stories, whatever, they submitted it. And the thing about Canvas is you're allowed to see the spread of your grades. Basically, what I mean by this is if you click on your grade in Canvas, at least on the mobile version that I found, you can see the high, the low, and the average. So you can see what the average score on the test is. You can also see what the highest score and the lowest score. So anyways, grades come out, and Nate gets the notification on his phone. He was fairly confident in his, his test or his group paper or whatever. I'm not saying that Nate expected to get an A+ on his first paper in a class. In fact, I found a lot of English teachers will almost lowball you on the first paper so that there's really clear room for you to improve, because they just love to see a student improve, which I understand. Every teacher wants to see a student improve. But even if a student comes in and gives A work, I feel on the first paper, quite often teachers will just give you a lower grade and just so you can get a higher grade later on, which whatever, right? But Nate receives a very scary score. Nate receives a 54%. So Nate was kind of expecting this teacher, to maybe have higher standards, maybe to be a tough grader, but not this, man. This is insane.
So Nate immediately checks Canvas and sees that the average was like a 62. So he feels a little bit better knowing that everyone did really poorly, but he starts texting his friends because, his friends in his class, because this is a pretty alarming grade to get. At least for Nate, he was definitely used to getting B's and A's in his English classes because he was at least a decent writer. He wasn't the greatest writer ever, but you kind of didn't need to be the greatest, right? You didn't have to be Shakespeare to get an A in like high school English or middle school English, right? You don't need to be a perfect writer to do that. So he was talking with his other friends and they were all like, yeah, it's really strange. She's like super strict. We don't totally know why. So they get into class and the teacher says, hello class, like welcome back. I hope you had a good time, whatever. I understand that some of you may or may not be disappointed with the grades that you received, which, yeah, obviously, bro, you gave people like 40%, 50%. People are not going to be happy with a fail. Oh, I'm really happy with my fail. I thought I was going to get a fail, but instead I got a fail. So I'm really happy about that. Like, said nobody ever. So yeah, no S, Sherlock. People aren't happy. So anyway, she's like, so I've decided to make little write-ups for each of you, just to say how you can improve, and you can improve your scores. So the teacher started walking around handing the stuff out. And, in most cases, what would you expect to see on this? Maybe grammar, right? Your grammar was really bad. I care a lot about grammar. I will help you improve. And if you improve your grammar, your grade will increase dramatically, right? Maybe the storytelling wasn't that good. Read these stories and try and emulate their style until you come up with your own style, and then your grade will improve. You may not expect to see, you are kind of like ignoring you are being offensive. Okay, this is like, how did she say it exactly? The story time I received from Nate, basically she said, it is less about your writing and more about you as a writer. You got a grade because of you as a writer and not because of your writing. And Nate, when he saw this, was a little bit confused, so he went on to read the next line. Yeah, so after the line saying that, you received the grade not for your writing, but because who you are as a writer, the next line basically said, as a writer, you must embody, good values and good health. So when Nate, read this, he was, really just taken aback. Obviously, maybe he should have seen this coming, knowing the published work that this teacher was selling on their website. But then the note went on to say that until you become you physically embody good morals and ethics, I cannot justify a good grade on your writing, as I think being a writer and your writing is really connected. She then goes on to specify that basically Nate will have to become obese. This is this is so weird, bro. This is so weird. I'm glad that I had normal teachers in high school, bro. I'm glad I had normal teachers. Today's secret word of the day is teacher. Not that creative, I know, but whatever. So comment teacher down below if you made it this far into the video. And while you're down there, check out the pinned comment, as there's a link to my Spotify page in which you can listen to these stories as podcasts on Spotify and help me out doing that. And also, there's a link to my second channel, which I read stories like this. However, instead of reading stories that you guys submit, I read stories from across the web and mostly from Reddit. So go subscribe to that channel, as it's a lot smaller, and it would help out a lot if you did subscribe. Anyways, though, so Nate, when he reads this, is just like, what? Nate assumes that he must have, okay, I must have misread something. There's no way that I read this correctly. Maybe she's speaking about, Nate's trying to justify what he just read. He's like, no, I'm just going to read it again. He reads it again, and sure enough, it says basically along the lines of, I'm grading you as a writer, not just your writing. And if you aren't obese, then I can't justify giving you a good grade, because not only is it not healthy, but it goes against, my moral and ethics system. So Nate was not the only one to get this as a response. And about a minute after, the teacher went around handing back these responses, so many hands went up, right? I think people read it in 30 seconds, but they needed to wait at least a minute to 2 minutes before they actually said anything, because they needed to reread it to make sure that they didn't read it wrong and embarrass themselves by saying something completely ridiculous.
So after everyone actually realized that what they read was what they read, a lot of, like, half the class's hands shoot up immediately. And the teacher's like, oh, looks like we have a lot of questions. So Nate doesn't raise his hand because Nate has a feeling that other people had similar issues and that they would probably cover the issues that he had. So sure enough, this kid is like, what do you mean by I need to become obese to get a good grade? Like, is this a joke? So the teacher looks and is like, thank you, Ben. We're going to call the guy who raised his hand and said that. We're going to call him Ben. So she's like, thank you, Ben, for bringing that up. No, in fact, like, you guys are actually have been followed. Like, society would make you think that that's a crazy thing to say. Yes, dude, let me just say something. A little side tangent. If you ever find yourself saying society in a sentence, please check yourself. Maybe it is like the right thing to say in that sentence. But whenever someone is like, blah, 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 because society, dude, I don't know. I just can't take the sentences seriously. But anyway, she's like, yes, Nate or Ben, I totally understand why you'd say that, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault, Ben. It's not your fault. She was trying to have that, oh, what's that movie called that's really good that has Robin Williams in it? He's like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's trying to do like one of those moments, but instead of like an actual good situation where that would make sense, it's not your fault that you believe that me saying that I won't give you a good grade unless you're literally clinically obese is bad. It's not your fault. It's society's fault. She then goes on to kind of elaborate what she was trying to say. She was trying to say that she believes that writing something very like floofy. She said something like kind of like one of these kind of like dumb writer English teacher things that just don't make a lot of sense. She basically said, you know, the writer and their writing, it's not two separate entities. It's interconnected. I don't see them separately. Like, I attach the writer to the writing. I think they flow between each other. Which, yeah, dude, technically, right, like, yes, the writer wrote the piece that you're reading. Yes, that is true, I guess. But basically, she's like, and I can't give out a grade. Like, my grades are holistic combinations of both. And I can't give out a good grade if it's a bad writer, even if the writing is good. She's really trying to justify one of the craziest, goofiest things ever. But anyway, she's like, yeah, I can't give out a good grade if the writer isn't good. And the thing is, guys, if you read my work, and then she starts to get a little snappy with them, which is pretty bold in my opinion, but she starts to get a little snappy being like, if you actually read my work or bought my books, you would realize that I hold this position very dearly and that I have plenty of research to back it up. If you guys remember, earlier I said that her research was literally just, peer-reviewed by her, which means it's not even research at all, sourced by her, written by her, etc., right? So she was like, yeah, if you guys actually bother to read my research, aka buy my stuff from my personal store, you would realize I had this conviction, right? So obviously all the kids were not really happy with this. And after class, because they didn't want to fight with her in class because they kind of realized, there's just like some people in life where it's just not worth fighting with them because you know that they will never, and I mean never, change their mind about anything. And you know what? Some people, unfortunately, just be lost causes, bro. Like, that's just kind of how it is. And sometimes you gotta you just can't fight it out with them. So I think most people in the class realized that it would be a lost cause to try and fight with a teacher on this. So after class, all the people in the class kind of stop outside the classroom. And Nate and all the other guys are like, look, we need to do something about this. So they all get together and they all make sure that they have the pieces of paper that, it's written down, exact reasons for why they did poorly. They basically got she got caught red-handed. Not even caught red-handed. She literally painted her hands red and look, catch me, guys. She made this really easy, which is kind of funny. But anyways, so they gather all their papers and they head all the way up to the principal's office. And, it's a huge group of kids show up to the principal's office. So it obviously gets, the principal's attention. So the principal's like, okay, guys, come on in. What's the problem? What seems to be the issue here? And one of the kids explains the situation. And the principal, I think understandably, kind of questions this because, kids aren't always the most truthful. And sometimes even when kids are trying to be truthful, their interpretation of what is actually happening is skewed because they don't have the right context. However, they had all the right context here. And in fact, their interpretations were not skewed at all. And that's when they showed the principal the evidence, which was pretty damning. It kind of got her. And the principal's like, wow, I don't know how to react to this. And they also made sure to add in that in the very beginning of class, that she was like selling stuff on her store and that she linked it on the Canvas page and that she basically encouraged kids, if they wanted a better grade, to go buy her stuff. So obviously the principal factored that in. It's like, whoa, this is like really serious. If you're lying to me, this is a big deal. And they're like, no, we're not lying to you. And some of them were kind of afraid that the teacher would have completely denied it, as maybe the teacher was starting to realize, oh, maybe I'm in the wrong here, right? And I might get fired for this, even if I don't think I'm in the wrong here. So the kids were a little bit nervous, but the principal went and interviewed the teacher. And what must have happened was that the teacher assumed that her logic was correct, because here's the thing. A couple days later, kids come in, because they come in from the weekend, and they have a substitute teacher in English class. And they obviously ask the substitute teacher, where's our normal teacher? And the substitute teacher's like, I don't know, I'm just a sub. So what happened was the teacher never came back. They got a permanent substitute after a little while. And what must have happened was that the teacher must have been like confronted by the principal. The principal was probably like, oh, there's obviously a misunderstanding here. Ha ha ha, can you just help me clear this up? And the teacher must have been like, nope, no misunderstanding. I failed these students because they weren't clinically obese. And the principal was probably just like, so the teacher demands my girlfriend breaks up with me because I'm not overweight. Today we got a pretty crazy story, so let's jump into it and subscribe if you're new. So anyways, we're going to call the subscriber who submitted this story Adrian. So anyways, Adrian met this girl who we're going to call Clara, right? And they got along really well off the bat. So they were mutual friends of like mutual friends. So they each had friends that knew each other. And I think Adrian and Clara were both looking to find someone new at the time, or just looking for someone to date. And I think the friends of friends kind of figured out that they would be a good pair. So they decided to set each other up, and things have been great ever since. So Clara and Adrian have been dating for a couple months at this point. Clara had a teacher who we're just going to call, we're just going to call it's a Miss. We're going to call her Miss Tree. I don't know why, but it's just the first thing that came into my head, so you guys are going to have to deal with it. Anyways, Miss Tree was Clara's English teacher, and, she was very nice to Clara and turned out to be Clara asked Miss Tree to be her advisor, and they became somewhat close. They weren't, like, best friends or anything, but they were definitely pretty close. And so this all happened, right, when Clara decides that she wants to introduce Adrian, her boyfriend, to Miss Tree. So another little piece of information which seems super irrelevant but is actually really relevant to this story is that Clara is like slightly overweight, but like not even that big of it, like not really. And the thing is, you guys might be thinking, why am I even saying this? Normally I wouldn't say this. However, Adrian said it was an extremely important part of the story. And the thing is, Adrian really doesn't care. Some people might have more preferences when it comes to this, but Adrian didn't see it as a negative or positive. He just saw it as what it was. So anyways, Clara and Miss Tree had a really good relationship. And so one day, Clara was, I don't think Miss Tree was, Clara's teacher at this point, but like advisor, whatever. And like at this high school, there was like a really close like advisor type of environment. So they really wanted to match teachers with kids that they thought would get along really well. So anyways, Clara was sitting there with Miss Tree, and she was like, oh, I've had a boyfriend for a little bit, and, I want you to meet him. Almost like a kind of a junior version of Meet the Parents. If you don't know, in a relationship, when, the significant other meets the parents, it's usually a really big deal. In some cultures, it is like the biggest deal ever. But I guess like meeting your advisor at this school was kind of like the junior version of Meet the Parents. So it's like Meet the Advisor. So you don't have to be incredibly serious, but it's still, I guess, it's a step in the right direction, if you know what I mean. So anyways, Miss Tree seems very excited, or at least Clara says Miss Tree seems very excited at first. I don't know what Miss Tree's expectations were, but they must have been pretty high, or not pretty high, but pretty specific, as you guys will see. So anyways, Adrian walks into the room, as Clara was like, oh, well, he's actually outside. I just wanted to let you know, beforehand, give you a heads up so I didn't jump scare you and be like, oh, this is my boyfriend who's standing right here. And so Adrian walks in, and now from Adrian's perspective, he looks and he sees Miss Tree, and Miss Tree's face, at least Miss Tree didn't have much of a poker face, because from a very kind of open, excited looking face, her face kind of drops when she sees Adrian. And here's the thing. Adrian's not like okay, first of all, you shouldn't be disappointed if someone that you like is dating someone that you don't find attractive. Like, that's a messed up thing in the first place. But second of all, Adrian wasn't even that bad of a looking guy. Like, he was pretty decent looking, and Adrian and Clara, it seemed like a normal couple. It wasn't like one of these couples where it's some like 20-year-old supermodel dates some 80-year-old rich guy who's super, like, not super attractive and probably a bad guy as well, but just because he has a lot of money. This was a very normal relationship. And Adrian picked up right away that, Miss Tree not only seemed disappointed, but in fact seemed offended by him, which was very, very strange. Miss Tree then, didn't say anything, was like, oh, nice to meet you. What's your name? Kind of said it in a bit of a patronizing way, but Adrian kind of ignored this and was like, hey, my name's Adrian. It's very nice to meet you. My girlfriend Clara says a lot of really great things about you. I'm so happy that you guys have such a nice relationship. So anyways, they continue on with an interaction. They speak a little bit. Miss Tree is obviously almost like pretending to be nice. Like, it's very clear that she is holding back her true feelings, but obviously if it's pretty clear, she's not doing a great job masking it. So anyways, Adrian leaves, and, Clara and Miss Tree continue on having their conversation. And afterwards, Adrian and Clara are together, and Adrian's like, hey, like, I don't know, maybe I was just being really, like, maybe I was looking into it too much, but I kind of felt like your teacher or your advisor, Miss Tree, didn't really like me. Like, I don't know. And Claire's like, why do you say that? He's like, I don't know. It's kind of just a feeling, which I know sounds really stupid, but I just kind of have a feeling that she doesn't like me. Like, it seemed like when she looked at me, when we first made eye contact, she almost seemed extremely disappointed. And I don't know how to explain it. It's just how, a look I got. And Clara looks at him and says, look, Adrian, you're probably just, overreacting, which, I think is cute, right? I want, you want to seem, good in front of the people that I care about. That's why I like you, and, whatever. They have a little relationship moment right there. But she's like, look, Miss Tree thinks you're fine. Like, she didn't say anything to me about it. Side note from me, hasn't said anything yet. Adrian sounds a little crazy here, but the truth is sometimes crazier than what most people would think, because Adrian is actually right here. So Clara doesn't know this yet. So Clara goes on to be like, oh, you're just overreacting. You're thinking too much about it. Like, don't worry about it. Like, I'm sure she loves you, right? I'm sure she thinks you're great. And so Adrian and Clara kind of go on about their day. So this is a day later. Adrian and Clara go get lunch. They usually get lunch in the school cafeteria at least a couple times a week. Adrian's really good about, or really works pretty hard to make sure that he has time for his friends and also time for his girlfriend. It's a full-time commitment, right, to have a relationship. So he's definitely, he tries to balance the both of them. But every couple days out of the week, they'll get lunch together, and they'll do other stuff. But it's kind of like that's how the lunch is split up. So when they sit down for lunch, Clara looks like she has something on her mind. So Adrian asks, is everything okay? And she looks at him and says, I don't know, I just had a really weird conversation with Miss Tree. And Adrian's like, oh boy. So he's like, what was your weird conversation? She's like, I don't know, you might be onto something. I'm not totally sure. It's weird. And Adrian's like, okay, well, spill, what's going on? Yeah, so Adrian is kind of like, okay, I kind of knew that something like this would come up one day. I knew that she didn't like me or whatever. But yeah, so Clara goes on to explain the conversation that she just had with Miss Tree. So throughout the week, they have a lot of slots where, students can meet with their advisors. And obviously, if you have a better relationship with your advisor, you'll take more advantage, as only some of the slots are mandatory and some are just if you want to. But since Clara and Miss Tree, up to this point at least, had such a good relationship, Clara would always take the most advantage, or the highest advantage, of all these slots. So today was, another time that they met. And Miss Tree was starting to talk about something, a kind of a theory that she had. So this was when the conversation started to get really weird. So Miss Tree was talking about, how she does a lot of studying of, large individuals. It's fat studies or something. Look, I'm a STEM major. I don't know anything about that kind of field. I really don't know. I can't comment. But anyway, she says she does a lot of that in her free time and a lot of research or whatever. And she started to tell Clara about this theory that she had about how, larger individuals needed to stick together, and they need to stick to their kind, since their kind are the only ones who understand them. Yeah,
Take that out of context, and that is a really messed up thing to say. Even take that in context, and that's a really messed up thing to say. With or without context, that's a not great thing to say, in my opinion. But anyways, right, so Clara was like, in her head, she's probably thinking, why on earth is Miss Tree telling me this? It just so happened to be the day after Miss Tree got a physical view of her boyfriend. Because Miss Tree has known about Adrian for a really long time, but didn't know who he was because, you know, there's a lot of kids at this school and Miss Tree never had him as a student. So it's really weird that Miss Tree happens to bring up her theory that, you know, fat individuals should stick together and should stay away from non-large individuals, like, at all. Like, the day after she sees her boyfriend for, like, in person for the first time. So this is kind of a disturbing revelation. The thing is, though, Clara felt a little uncomfortable in this conversation, yet Miss Tree did not directly or explicitly say, you need to break up with your boyfriend because he's a skinny individual. Yet. Keyword. Very important word. Or very important thing I just said. Yet. She did not say explicitly to break up with her boyfriend because he's not a large individual. Yet. Stick around, guys. It gets really weird. So Clara said that Miss Tree kind of like continued on with the conversation, and after that point it was very, very normal, and it was kind of like the more normal stuff they talked about, which is like, I don't know, they had like a lot of shared ground on like, oh, women's rights, what's going on in the news, how can I like be more of an activist, or how can I help out other people, kind of like stuff that, you know, that was normally their conversation. So it kind of made sense to put in this kind of like fat studies thing, I think, but it also was really weird and really targeted. At least Clara felt targeted by this. So Clara tells Adrian that, okay, well, maybe I'm just overreacting, maybe because you said yesterday that you felt like that she didn't like you, that I'm now kind of looking for that. And I don't know, but I can totally agree with this idea that, like, if you are looking for something, your brain will kind of find a way to find it, such as how we're programmed to find faces in the environment, because when I can only assume evolutionarily, when we were, you know, a lot like hunter-gatherers and we were not the apex predator as we are right now, that if we saw a face kind of hidden in like the brush or something, that would be dangerous. So kind of the same way that we will see faces where faces don't exist, Clara was kind of thinking, well, maybe I'm seeing her not liking you when she's actually not saying that, but I'm seeing it because I'm looking out for it. However, Adrian only became more convinced, because yesterday he wasn't completely convinced that he was right, but he kind of knew he was right. I don't even know if you guys have experienced this, where it's like, you can't prove it, but you know it. Now he basically feels like he knows it and can prove it. So Adrian's like, okay, I don't think your advisor likes me very much. I think she's probably going to try and push you to break up with me. I don't know why, but I feel like that's like what's going to happen. And Clara's like, I don't know why she would. I've told her all the stuff you've done for me. So Clara had gone through a lot of rough things in her life. And for that reason, she's, had a lot of difficult, like, emotional unpacking and response from the whole thing. I mean, when you go through difficult things in life, it isn't like once you're done with a difficult thing, all the problems go away. A lot of, like, emotional damage and work that needs to be done happens months, years, decades after. So Clara is not, like, the easiest person to be in a relationship with. But relationships aren't supposed to be easy. And, Adrian has been really great in this regard. And Clara has, told Miss Tree in great detail of all the things Adrian has done for her. So she almost feels a little bit thrown off guard that, Miss Tree is starting to, like, be like, oh, well, because you guys are different sizes, then you shouldn't be dating, right? Like, that seems like a very backwards ideology. But Clara tells Adrian, look, she's not going to change my mind. And also, I don't think she said anything explicitly yet, which is true. To this point, she's not blatantly said, break up with your boyfriend because he's smaller than you. Anyways, the next meeting, the next day that Clara and Miss Tree have goes really poorly. It goes really bad. By the way, a secret word of the day is tree. So if you made it this far into the video, comment tree down below. And while you're commenting tree in the comment section, check out the pinned comment, as there's a link to the Spotify page in which you can listen to these stories as podcasts, as well as a link to my second channel in which I tell stories just like this, but instead of from you guys, they're from Reddit. So subscribe to that channel to help me out. Anyways, in this meeting, Clara goes into it really hoping that, her and Miss Tree can talk about things that they normally talk about. Miss Tree and her have a lot of in common on, like, politics and talking about, like, women's issues and stuff like that. And she's really bonded with her over that content, right? Clara is really hoping that when she goes into this, that she doesn't have to hear anything about Miss Tree's theories about how, small individuals should not be with large individuals, which is pretty messed up, or anything about her boyfriend at all. So Clara walks into the room and is like, Miss Tree, did you see this thing, like, on the news? Like, this new thing just got passed. Like, how can we repeal it? How can we fight back? Did you see it? And Miss Tree looks at her and says, oh, Clara, I did see this, and it's an important conversation, but the fact of the matter is we have an even more important conversation for you and I to have right now. And Clara didn't know explicitly that this was going to be about her boyfriend, but she knew that this was going to be about her boyfriend. Yeah, so anyways, Miss Tree goes on to say, like, Clara, I think this chat is super important, and you know that I want the best for you, and you know that everything I do is for your favor. As your advisor, I do everything for your betterment. And you also know that I've dedicated my life to research and learning and really seeking truth. Clara, you cannot be with Adrian anymore. He does not understand your struggles as a larger individual. Here's the thing. I've done the research, and the skinny people, the small people, those people, the one who focus extremely hard on their physical appearance. They are so wrapped up in the physical that they've completely neglected and put the emotional aside. They have not spent the time that we have really focusing on ourselves, really focusing on embracing what is beyond the physical, beyond the materialistic. We have gone to a new level. And for that reason, there is no way that Adrian and you can stay together. So Clara's eyes almost gloss over. She is just like, how do I respond to this? Like, how? And Clara tries to respond but my boyfriend is really emotionally intelligent. Like, he's really helped me through things that I haven't been able to figure out. And Miss Tree is like, Clara, look, he might seem emotionally intelligent, but no one who spends that much time on their appearance has any depth that we do. If you want a partner who truly understands your struggles and truly has put his emotions first, then you must find someone of your own size. And Clara's just so taken aback by this, because up until this point, she really saw Miss Tree as a level-headed, trusted individual that she would go seek advice from. And now she doesn't know what to think, because let me just say that Claire is 100% right. This is not a normal thing to say. This is not a normal, level-headed, smart individual thing to say. If you're saying this, you're probably not spending that much time thinking, at least not in a positive and or productive manner. So Clara's like, okay, haha, and Miss Tree's like, no, I need to see you pull up your phone and say that you're gonna text Adrian that we're breaking up. And Clara's like, well, I don't know if I can do that. And Miss Tree's like, Clara, I'm really staking my reputation on this. I've done the research. I know that this is correct. You're wrong here. I need you to do this or our advisorship is over. Yeah. Miss Tree literally threatened Clara that they were no longer going to be the advisor pairing that Clara liked so much and benefited so much from unless she texts him right now that they're breaking up. Even if Clara did agree with Miss Tree that it's a good idea to break up, which she doesn't, by the way, because the reasoning's ridiculous and she's in a good relationship, even if she did, let's say hypothetically she did, maybe she doesn't believe that the best way to go about it is over an offhanded text message. Right? So Clara's like, well, even if I do want to break up, maybe I don't want to over text message. And Miss Tree says, well, I need proof that you did it. Anyways, so Clara is kind of feeling forced into doing this. So she kind of sheepishly takes out her phone and, pulls up Adrian's contact. And they just had some really good conversation over text or whatever, right? They're just like, oh, do you want to meet up tonight or whatever? And she sends them a text message I'm sorry, we're breaking up. Obviously, Clara's going to go meet with Adrian afterwards and, I don't know, be like, hey, we're not breaking up, by the way, lol, but here's a funny story. So she sends the message, and almost immediately Adrian is just kind of text back question mark, because it feels out of place. He knows that Adrian, that Clara would definitely pull him aside and be like, hey, let's talk for a second. This is how I'm feeling. She wouldn't be like, we're breaking up randomly out of a text message. So let's flip to Adrian's POV. Adrian gets his text message, and obviously he's a little nervous. His heart's racing a little bit. He's a little sketched out,
But he also kind of feels like that there's a lot more to this story and that he doesn't feel like she actually is breaking up with him. He doesn't know the exact situation. I mean, he knows that Miss Tree's a little weird, but he has no idea. Like, why would you imagine that someone's advisor would force them to send a text message saying that we're breaking up? So Adrian, after gets another text from Clara saying, I just don't think we're right for each other. And Adrian is like, okay, this is really weird. So he sends a text message back being like, okay, well, let's meet up and talk about this at least. Flipping back to Clara's POV. And Miss Tree's like, see, look at that. He's clingy. He's trying to say, he refuses your answer. He doesn't accept what you're saying. And Clara looks at Miss Tree and is like, he just wants to meet in person. Like, I broke up with him over text message saying so little. We've been together for long enough. I feel like he at least deserves an answer. And Miss Tree's like, no. You're trying to see the best in him. I'm seeing what is actually happening. You must trust me. So Clara realizes now that Miss Tree is completely unhinged. And eventually their session ends. Miss Tree's like, all right, I'll be seeing you tomorrow. I know this might be hard, but I'm sure when you sleep on it, you'll wake up tomorrow and realize that I did the right thing for you and that you did the right thing by breaking up with your boyfriend. I knew he was toxic the second he walked in. So, Clara looks at Miss Tree, is like, haha, thank you. And she walks out and she's like, whoa. So she calls up Adrian, and Adrian picks up the phone, now switched to Adrian's POV. So Adrian is just kind of pacing around because he's like, oh my God, did she actually break up with me? Because Adrian kind of feels like, okay, this seems a little weird. I don't actually believe that this is true. However, he's a little weirded out by it. He's worried that, maybe she actually does feel this way. So when he gets a call from her, he's like, oh my God. He picks it up. He's like, hey, is everything okay? And she's like, so I'm not breaking up with you. And he's like, oh, it literally sigh of relief. He's like, oh, thank God. And she's like, so I was kind of forced to send those text messages by Miss Tree. And Adrian is like, oh my God. And she's like, look, let's meet for a second. So they go to the cafeteria. Even though it wasn't lunchtime, kids could still go in there and sit in there during the free periods if they wanted to. So they went in there, they sat down, and Clara's like, look, you were totally right about Miss Tree. She literally just said that she was forcing me to break up with you or that she wouldn't be my advisor anymore. Adrian's like, oh my God, she's actually insane. Jesus. She's like, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I should have listened to you before. And he's like, no, I honestly wasn't convinced of myself either. I thought I was just overreacting. And she's like, look, Miss Tree's not going to be my advisor from this point on. She was saying some really, really hurtful stuff about how you could never understand me because we're different sizes. And Adrian's like, what? And she's like, yeah, some pretty loopy stuff. And also the fact that she threatened to no longer be my advisor unless I break up with you. I don't know. That's just not what I wanted in an advisor. So yeah, the next day, Clara does not show up to her appointment and she formally submits an advisor change. And so a couple weeks later, after the advisor change goes through, Miss Tree runs into Clara and Adrian in the hallway. And Clara kind of whispers, oh God. Because at this point, Clara and Miss Tree had not seen each other since the whole incident and then her switching. And Miss Tree walks by and stops and is looks at Adrian and is like, I hope you know what you're doing, and then storms off, basically trying to blame the whole thing on Adrian. And Clara kind of just looks at Adrian and is like, ignore that, please. Today we got a story of a teacher who actually tries to sue their 13-year-old student for bullying them online. Imagine that as a teacher, you get so mad that some kid says something mean about you that you actually try and sue them. This is a pretty crazy story time, so sit back, relax, subscribe if you're new, leave a like in the video to claim your free nothing, and let's jump into it. So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted this story Colin. So Colin was in 6th grade, and in one of his classes, he had this teacher who we're going to call her Miss Sensitive because, bro, if you're actually out here trying to sue a 13-year-old kid for calling you mean names online, then you deserve the name of Miss Sensitive. So we're going to call the teacher Miss Sensitive, bro. Yeah, so anyways, Colin, the subscriber, had a friend, and we're going to call this friend Ben. So anyways, Ben kind of self-identified as a roast god. Ben was definitely the type of guy to
have no chill, as some people might say, and go after literally anyone. He was still like a cool dude to be around. I don't know. I feel like definitely in like middle school, like a lot more kids are ruthless, but they're not bad people. They just think like to be cool, they got to be ruthless or whatever. But the thing is, right, Ben was like, at least he wasn't going up to kids and roasting them, being like, damn, bro, those shoes look terrible, bro. Or wow, man, like you should invest in some deodorant. That'd be the best investment for you, bro. Like he's not doing stuff like that. But anyways, they all have a class together and they have it with Miss Sensitive. So anyways, Miss Sensitive was a slightly larger woman. There's literally nothing wrong with that, man. I mean, you lived your life, bro. That's all I'm going to say. So on this fateful day, Miss Sensitive was going around and decided to give out a pop quiz. I've never actually received a quote-unquote pop quiz before. I've always been informed before I have an assessment. I just think it makes a lot more sense if you're gonna assess someone, like if you're gonna give them a quiz or a test, at least give them an opportunity to study for it. Like I get that you're trying to check if they've been doing the work, but at least give them a heads up. I just think pop quizzes are kind of dumb. But anyways, Miss Sensitive decided that today was the day that she was gonna give out a pop quiz. And this also happened to be the day that Ben just didn't do the reading. I know for a lot of classes, like English type classes where you have to do a lot of reading or whatever, that, look, man, you're not going to do the reading every single day. I know that I don't do the reading every single day. And it's kind of like you got to do like a little risk reward. Like if you don't do the reading, you have more time. But then again, you also have a chance of going in and getting absolutely owned by the test or quiz or whatever, right? Or just like the I don't know, she'll like call in you to be like, oh, so Jimmy, what happened in chapter 7? You're like, I think chapter 7 happened in chapter 7. Like I get it, right? But Ben kind of took the risk and he kind of got owned. So sure enough, like, Ben got probably like an F on the quiz or a 0 or just didn't like get good points on the quiz. He definitely knew that he didn't do well. And Colin was sitting next to him and Ben was like very visibly like angry. Like he was just like really like PO'd by the whole situation. So Colin is kind of like, yo, dude, like you good. Ben's like, bro, Miss Sensitive is literally the worst. And Colin's like, yeah, that pop quiz was pretty unfair. So Colin did kind of feel like, okay, that pop quiz was kind of out of left field. I don't know why she did it, but I mean, hey man, it is something. She did say that like she will sometimes pull out pop quizzes on the reading, especially if she feels like people were not or had not been doing enough of the reading, right? Like, or, so she said it was something that she might do. So in all fairness, bro, like Ben didn't do the reading and he kind of just paid the consequences, but bro was still pretty upset. Yeah, so, Ben was like, no, dude, like, Miss Sensitive is literally the worst teacher ever. Like, she sucks. And Colin's like, yeah, whatever, right? Like, yeah, I kind of agree with you. Miss Sensitive overall was kind of a mid teacher. Like, she just, I don't know, dude. Like, she would always, like, have these kind of, like, she would be, like, one of those English teachers that was, like, kind of, like, super arrogant in everything that she said. Kind of had this weird, pretentious entitlement about it. Like, she's like, oh, and what the author really meant here was insert something that just never happened. Like, I swear to God, like, English teachers will read a sentence, the book is read, and they'll be like, well, what the author meant by this is that the book has depth and perspective. Like, no, dude, maybe the book was just read. I swear to God, if you actually were able to bring back these authors from the grave and bring them back and be like, hey, man, so what did you mean by this? They'd be like, oh, well, can you not read, dummy? Like, the book is read. I said the book is read because the book is read. And the English teacher would be like, no, but I thought it meant that, like, yeah, so, this teacher was kind of like that anyways, but Colin also just was like, okay, that's like all English teachers. However, when they got home from school, they had this really big grade group chat. So people had little group chats with each other, maybe Discord messages, be along the lines of that. But they also had a really big group chat that had basically everyone in the class. So they had like a class-wide group chat. I think I said grade-wise, I meant to say class-wide. So Colin got back home, he was just kind of chilling, doing his thing, and he like picks up his phone and looks at it, and he sees that there's a new message in the class-wide group chat. So they made that a while ago when they started the class, just, because they're like, okay, if we have any issues or if someone forgets the homework or whatever, it's probably just a good idea to have everyone together in communication, but it wasn't used casually. Like, this group chat wasn't a group chat that you would go in and just, like, I don't know, drop, like, anyone want to play duos on, like, Fortnite or something. Like, no one was going to go and chat and say something like that. However, Ben used this chat to vent his anger. Yeah, but however, so Colin checks his phone and he sees a message from Ben. He opens it up and he's like, he gets the message. It basically reads something along the lines of like, Miss Sensitive is annoying and fat. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think Ben was just really just PO'd that day. I think Ben was just genuinely annoyed, just so, like, annoyed by the fact that, like, he got called out for not doing the reading, which he's like, everyone doesn't do the reading. The one day I don't do it, we have a quiz, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So he's like, yeah, Miss sorry, I always use Miss Davenport. Miss Sensitive is lame and fat and sucks. So, like, very childish insults, like, whenever you insult someone just based on their appearance, normally that means you really just can't, you have nothing better to, like, insult them on. Like, if you go for the appearance, bro, I don't know, kind of just like, oh, so you're not creative, or maybe you just don't have anything actually bad against them. But, you know, Ben was just mad, and, like, someone replied with, like, the skull emoji, like, bro. Another person's like, yo, chill out. Like, people were like, all right, bro, like, calm down. But, like, not a lot of people chatted. It wasn't like, oh my God, he called her fat. It's like, okay, it's a sixth grader, aka also the kid who was known, or not was known, but was the self-proclaimed roast god, so it wasn't as if this was out of left field for him. So most of the kids were like, all right, bro, chill out, whatever. And yeah, Colin and Ben and everyone else in the class kind of thought that it was going to end there. However, somehow the chats got leaked. You know that meme where it's like me and the boys of the gamer chat got leaked and it's like all the people walking into the courtroom? Yeah, that's basically Ben here. Yeah, so somehow the chats got leaked. Because, and they got leaked within a day. So someone must have snitched real heavy or real quick. Because the next day they come in, and Miss Sensitive is looking all angry at all of them. Even though she knew who sent it, she was somehow, like, found a way to be mad at literally everybody. And was like, guys, we need to have a little talk before we start class. And at this point, Colin didn't realize that, you know, Ben's message got leaked to her. So, like, Colin was, like, really confused. He was like, oh, did, like, everybody cheat or something, and then everyone got exposed for cheating, or what's the word? Like, what's going on here? I'm just really confused. So Colin sits down, and everyone else sits down, and she's like, guys, I want to let you know that words have impact, and that everybody is a person. So at first, Colin's like, oh, did someone, like, is there, like, a bullying issue? Like, I don't know, stuff like in middle school and high school, there will be a lot of, like, I don't know, a lot of, like, internal scuffles and bullying, and sometimes teachers will make, I don't know, this happened to me, actually. I didn't bully anyone, and I wasn't bullied, but I had to sit in on big meetings with the entire grade because one person was mean to another person, so I need to hear about it. Like, dude, I'm just a good individual. I'm just, like, a good little boy, you know? I'm doing what I need to do, and I need to waste my time listening to, oh, don't be mean. Yeah, no, number two, Sherlock, bro. Like, of course you should be nice. Like, are you serious right now? This is how we're spending my time? Yeah, so, everyone was kind of just super confused because, you know, Miss Sensitive was like, yeah, you know, words hurt, whatever. And then she's like, and also, just so you know, your actions online and out of school can still get you in trouble in school. And at that point, Colin almost immediately realized what the situation was about. He was super confused, and still to this day, he doesn't know who leaked the group chat. But he was, like, super confused, like, oh, wait, I'm, like, 90% sure that Miss Sensitive is talking about what, like, Ben said, because, like, Ben dropped in the group chat that she's fat, lol, or whatever, because he was mad at her. But how on earth, like, did this happen? So Miss Sensitive continues to go on to be like, your actions out of school can have consequences in school, and, like, if, you know, all this type of stuff, and says, like, you guys should learn to be nicer to other people. And while this was, like, kind of like a weird, awkward interaction, like, I don't know about you, but it's always just so awkward when, like, the teachers would just, like, scold you in front of everyone, especially if it's, like, a group punishment. Like, I remember this one time back in 8th grade, like, some kid had, like, peeped into another kid's, like, stall while they're taking a number 2, and they, like, got mad about it or whatever. And this guy, like, this guy's, I'm sure he was just doing his job, but he brought the entire grade together, and he's like, guys, I'm so disappointed in everyone. I'm like, dude, I wasn't there. I was doing my math homework. I don't care if someone's being a little bit too curious and mega sus. Like, that's not on me, bro. Like, why are you disappointing in me? I'm doing what I need to do. Anyway, so yeah, while that whole interaction was a little bit weird, Colin just kind of assumed that the whole thing was going to end here. Like, Miss Sensitive was going to have a whole, like, my mightier than thou, be nice to people speech or whatever, and it was going to end there. He would have never assumed that things were going to escalate, which they did. Yeah, so basically what ended up happening was Miss Sensitive
was pretty upset about this, which, I mean, look, if someone is calling you insults and maybe it's something that you are personally sensitive about, like, I can understand why you take that personally. However, also one thing, these are 6th graders. These are little kids. They don't, okay, not little kids, but these are kids that are still growing up. They're going to be mean. They're going to be cruel. And yeah, sure, reprimand them, whatever, right? But also realize you shouldn't take it that deep. Like when I read my comment section and someone's like, yeah, your videos are trash. And then I see their profile pic of some like anime profile pic. I go in their account and they're making like Roblox shorts. I'm like, bro, they're just a kid. Like, I don't really care, man. Like, you shouldn't care. However, Miss Sensitive was like really upset about this. So Miss Sensitive takes this whole issue to like, you know, the principal's office or whatever. And she was trying to get this kid like expelled. Like, apparently she was asking for some crazy punishment. Like, she was going for something really insane. I think the principal's office like, oh, well, okay, this kid said something pretty mean about you outside of school. There's not a lot we can do about that, but if you want to have like him come in and we force him to apologize to you or make him do some report about how, you know, bullying is bad and saying bad things is bad, or I don't even know. And, you know, the teacher must have been Miss Sensitive, was like, no, he needs to be expelled. This is unacceptable. There's no redemption. Which, like, no redemption, bro. Dude is like 13. What do you mean? He's got all of his life ahead of him. Like, what do you mean there's no redemption? Oh, a dude says something mean when he's 13? Nope, there's no going back. He's officially a bad individual. Nope, that's done. He's done for. Yeah, but apparently Miss Sensitive was really gunning for him to have a really, really bad punishment. And she was really upset by how she didn't get what she wanted. So I guess Miss Davenport decided to take the law into her own hands, or take the punishment into her own hands. This is where the title of the video becomes kind of integral to the story. Miss Davenport decides that she wants to try and open up an actual legal case against this kid for emotional damage. This is the most insane thing I've ever heard, by the way. So the way that they all learn this is probably one of the most inappropriate way. Okay, I don't mean like sus inappropriate. I mean like inappropriate, like just to do it. Just like, it's just so ridiculous. So the way that Colin and Ben and everyone else learns, and the way that Ben learns that there's a court case going to be against him, well, it doesn't get that far, as you guys will see, is in class. Basically, Miss Sensitive's like, you know what, guys, this is like a couple days later, guys, I want to teach you a little something. Sometimes the systems of law and governance, they don't do what needs to be done. So sometimes you need to take it into your own hands. And she then goes on to say, Ben, I know about the comment that you said to me. And Ben's like, what? Because I don't think Ben put 2 and 2 together. I think, so Colin was able to put 2 and 2 together, and he was able to realize that, okay, well, you know, I don't know, like, yeah, it was probably Ben's comment. That would make the most sense in the context, yada, yada, stuff like that. But I think Ben just was like completely oblivious. And he's like, what? So when she literally calls him out in front of all of his classmates, he was just so stunned, he was barely able to speak. Speak will be the secret word of the day. So if you made it this far into the video, comment speak in the comment section. And while you're in the comment section, check out the pinned comment on this video. There's a link to my Spotify page in which I upload all these stories as podcasts. And if you do listen to them, if you do listen to these stories on Spotify as podcasts, it actually does help me out. And also, the second link in the pinned comment is to my second channel. I upload daily stories on there, but those are from Reddit, where these are from you. So if you just want more stories and you want to help me out, subscribe to that channel and check out some videos after this one. Anyways, let's get right back to it. So yeah, the teacher is legitimately like calling this kid out right now, like putting him on the spot. And yeah, it's pretty awkward to read. Like, Colin is like super like awkward. Like, this is so awkward. He's just like, oh, this is so cringe. But Ben is like, oh my God. So she's like, yeah, I know what you said about me, Ben. She said, you called me fat and I'm super insecure about my weight. Like, okay, that's totally valid. Like, I know that like weight-based insults are pretty low blows because a lot of people deal with that stuff. Totally fair. But also, is the right context to do this? Like, is the right context to call this kid out in front of all of his classmates? Is that really the best way to go about this, Miss Sensitive? Are you serious right now? Like, yeah, sure. pull this kid aside, be like, I know what you said, and just so you know, like, this could affect a lot of people if you use these insults about other people and they hear about it, it could really affect them. But no, let's call him out in front of the entire class. But it gets even worse. It gets even worse, man. It literally gets even worse. Because then she goes on to say, and I went to the administration and, you know, I wanted a fair punishment, but they were taking your side. They were just saying that you should apologize to me, or you should do like learning about, you know, harassment and bullying. And that is just simply not enough for what you did. The entire class is like frozen right now because they knew that Miss Sensitive was, well, it's in the name, man, a little sensitive and a little weird and a little strange, but they were just like, oh my God, the overreaction on this is just insane. Yeah, so that's when Miss Sensitive decides to drop the bomb that, you know, she's like, you know what? You know, what you did to me was actually personal harassment and it caused mental damage. And like, okay, like it's kind of on you how you take this comment, especially remember, this is some kid and you're an adult, but whatever, right? And she's like, so I've decided that I will be opening up an official lawsuit against you for a mental, I forgot what I said earlier. It was what I said earlier. I don't think it was mental damage. It was like, emotional stress or something like that. Like people actually have lawsuits about that. And maybe they're like legitimate circumstances, but I just feel like so many people could try and use quote unquote emotional trauma, emotional stress. Like, is that even something you can actually sue someone on? Like, I think the teacher didn't even do their research on this. So the whole class is like silent, but even more silent than before. Because at least before they were like, okay, whatever, this teacher's pretty weird. But now they're like, oh my God, like, wait, pause. You're gonna sue a kid? Huh? Like, did I hear you correct right now? Are my ears jammed? Is there something, am I hearing things wrong? Do I need to get my ears checked? Do I need to go to the doctor? Is there like a secret animal living inside my ears blocking the noise